and Council to Secure Justice. Over the past 1 year, we have been organizing seminars to discuss the various impending issues that continue to be faced or issues that are in need of attention, debate, and discussion as the seminal Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act 2012 was introduced 10 years ago. One of the core issues of the Act, and for those children who have been victims or survivors of child sexual abuse, has been that of rehabilitation and reintegration back into the society. School dropouts, social anxiety issues, backlash from kin and community are often linked to the same. For those who have been working in the sector closely know that one of the toughest challenges that we face today has been that of rehabilitation across various issues in the ref sector. The issues range from procedural and systematic lapses, pendencies in courts, a lack of social integration, which also stems from a lack of education on the matter, and very often not having a child-centric approach. It is keeping this in mind that the need for child protection and child rights and welfare that DCPCR carries out their extremely important role. DCPCR has been constituted under the Commission for Protection of Child Rights Act 2005. The Commission is responsible for monitoring the implementation of the rights of the children, conducting research, inquiring into complaints and violations of child rights, and advising the government on policy matters on the issue of early childhood care and development, school education, protection of children from physical, mental, and sexual violence, child labor, early marriage, substance abuse, trafficking, etc. Our co-organizers for today's event, Council to Secure Justice, were established in Delhi in 2012 in response to a high number of child abuse cases and has been working since then with children who have been harmed by sexual violence and children who are in conflict with law for over 10 years now. Their programs offer psychosocial and legal assistance to children who have experienced sexual abuse. It is their work on using restorative justice and how they use it, the tool to prevent gender-based harm and a cycle of violence and trauma, is what sets them apart and as they approach rehabilitation from a newer lens. I would like to call Arushi from the CSJ team to set the context for today's seminar, and I hope you all also get to learn a little from the work they have been carrying out.
Thank you. Honorable Ms. Justice Tara Ganju, Professor Bajpai, esteemed guests, colleagues, my dear friends. This seminar is part of a series hosted by DCPCR in a bid to reflect, debate, and review the implementation of POCSO Act as it completes 10 years. Today, we will be discussing a very relevant and important topic of rehabilitation of POCSO victims, strategies, challenges, and way forward. To start with, a brief introduction of the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, or POCSO Act as it's commonly known. The Act was enacted in the year 2012 and was formulated to effectively deal with the child sexual abuse. The Act is gender neutral, has provisions for mandatory reporting and stricter penal provisions. The Act also provides for safeguarding the interests of the child at every stage of the judicial process by incorporating child-friendly mechanisms for reporting, recording of evidence, investigation, and speedy trial of offenses through designated special courts. As per research studies and our work on the field, the impact of child sexual abuse, CSA, may manifest different for each child, both in short-term and long-term. There may be psychological effects of child sexual abuse, which may include increased adverse mental health outcomes, such as depression, anxiety, health complications, possibility of illness, inflammation, and other health complications as well. Survivors also continue to have relationship difficulties because of insecure, avoidant attachments, communication difficulties, emotional dysregulation, and biological embedding of stress. Studies further show that those who have experienced CSA are also more likely to enter the legal system again, either as victims or as wrongdoers. Subsequent victimization is one of the most commonly documented outcomes of CSA. There is also an impact on the education of survivors, where due to safety concerns, social stigma, or trauma, children drop out of schools. Now, moving more towards the topic we have gathered to discuss, that is rehabilitation. It is an essential step of supporting CSA victims in their journey towards recovery. The process of rehabilitation involves providing the necessary aid and support to victims to restore their sense of normalcy and quality of life, and support to victims to restore their sense of normalcy and quality of life after experiencing sexual abuse. The POCSO and JJ Act and rules aim for the child's rehabilitation through various measures, including ensuring that the trial process is child-friendly and prioritizes the child's need. Emergency and long-term medical treatment, ensuring continued education for the child, and adequate compensation per the child's needs. All of these factors, multiple stakeholders have to coordinate with each other for orderly delivery of services to stakeholders. In a recent judgment titled X versus State of Entity of Delhi and other, passed by the Honorable High Court of Delhi, has poignantly opined that the survivor-centric justice is the key to prevent re-victimization of survivors of child sexual abuse. Relying on various studies and literature, the court further stated that the justice for survivors of sexual abuse has several components, such as having a voice, being treated with dignity, being informed, and being able to participate in the justice system, experiencing validation and vindication, and having the experience fully recognized as having taken place, and being true, regaining a sense of connectedness and belonging in society, which is related to being treated with dignity and respect, and about being psychologically, financially, and socially supported, and for there to be meaningful consequences for the offender, which includes offender responsibility, but is not necessarily tied to punishment. Rehabilitation may look something like this, that when we are ensuring the child's safety, when we seek orders from the court, CWC, or we go to the police, that even after the reporting of the offense, there might be some continued violence that the child faces. Or rehabilitation may also look like when there are emergency and long-term medical support which is provided. The family is advised and counseled about what has happened to the child, what will the judicial process look like, to keep them informed. The rehabilitation may also include providing compensation and special relief, legal aid, education, assistance in procuring essential documents, which may look like disability certificate for some children. There might be awareness which the child and the family need for the support that the child requires and the services that are available. And in requisite cases, psychological intervention. These are the stages where the child interacts with the stakeholders. In POCSO Act, every stakeholder and every stages, there are child-friendly mechanisms that have been enumerated. When the child goes to the police to register a complaint, so there are various child-friendly mechanisms that have been said, like the police to record the statement of the child where the child is comfortable either in their own home or where they are most comfortable in front of the persons, in front of their parent, preferably by a woman SI and in plain clothes. In hospital, the duty has been cast upon to provide emergency medical aid without getting into legal formalities. When the child's statement is recorded under 161 by police or 164 by judicial magistrates, then there is a facility to take aid of special educators, translators, as needed by the child, and to have the presence of a parent or the person the child trusts when the statement is being recorded. If needed, the child is to be produced before CWC, then the appointment of support person takes place. During trial, during examination, as well, the POCSO Act states a lot of child-friendly mechanism for the child to not be re-victimized. During examination, the question for examination, cross-examination, re-examinations are to be communicated to the judge, which in turn asks these questions. Questions are not to be passive-aggressive. Questions, character of the child and dignity of the child is maintained throughout. Further going into the child-friendly mechanisms during trial, the court is allowed to permit frequent breaks to the child, allowing a family member, person they trust, in the court to ensure the child is not called to the court repeatedly. And Delhi District Legal Service Authority for disbursal of compensation and appointment of legal aid. The rehabilitation of survivor of offenses under POCSO and JJ Acts involves various agencies with different roles to play. We discussed few in the previous slide. The police are also responsible for informing the family about the child's rights and preparing the preliminary assessment report under POCSO Act. They're also responsible for recording the statement of the child with utmost privacy and confidentiality. The Child Welfare Committee is required to ensure proper care, protection, and rehabilitation of the sexually abused children inter alia. The CWC is required to appoint a support person to assist the child throughout the investigation and trial process. The Special Court appoints the Special Public Prosecutor prosecute cases under the POCSO Act and is statutorily required to complete the trial within 1 year. The District Legal Service Authority is to provide free legal aid and assistance to the child. The court may award compensation for the child victim's relief and rehabilitation. Finally, the District Child Protection Unit is responsible for implementing the POCSO Act and other child protection measures in the district. There are a few roadblocks that in our field work that we have noticed and as the studies we have studied. So in few cases where the children are not produced before the CWC where it's needed. So a support person cannot be appointed and the requisite need that the child has is not given to the child. When a support person is not appointed, it plays havoc into minimizing the impact of secondary victimization. Although the situation in Delhi is better, however, as per the data recorded in the Supreme Court order dated November 30, 2019, in alarming rise in number of reported cases, rape incident, in 96% of the cases, a support person was not appointed. Another roadblock is the trial not being completed as per the time frame. Despite the statutory time frame for the completion of trial, as per the data recorded in the Supreme Court order, the investigation is completed in less than 60 days only in 35% of POCSO cases. As per the study done by Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, on average it takes 510 days for a POCSO case to be disposed of. In 2020, at 1284 days, Delhi had the highest average case length. As a result, children continue to be involved in the legal system for longer, which can hamper their road to recovery. Another roadblock is compensation not being provided. This compensation is intended for immediate rehabilitation of the child and is to be determined by the special court. There is a significant delay in interim and final compensation, and as per the data submitted to the Supreme Court, compensation was only ordered in 1% of the cases. The delay in disbursal of compensation makes the child rehabilitation more challenging. Further, the roadblock in education and health. Children continue to suffer additional adverse consequences. For instance, in a study undertaken by DCPCR titled as Mapping of Needs and Priorities, a study of child rape victims in Delhi, startling revelations were made. Analysis of the study revealed that 42% of the child victims dropped out of the school and 26% of the children suffered about different types of physical illnesses that were linked to rape. About 81% of parents stated they were unable to fulfill the health needs of their children. This seminar aims to understand how procedural lapses pause or hinder the rehabilitation of child survivors and way out. The seminar aims to hold a discussion on the challenges faced by child survivors in accessing justice and rehabilitation for their well-being, growth, protection, treatment, and development as provided under the POCSO Act. The aim of the seminar is to bring together stakeholders, experts, for overcoming the challenges faced by child survivors in accessing justice and rehabilitation services. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arushi. I'd now like to invite our esteemed guests for the day on stage. For the inaugural session today, we shall be joined by the chief guest, Honorable Ms. Justice Tara Vitasta Ganju, Judge High Court of Delhi, along with Professor G.S. Bajpai, Vice Chancellor, National Law University of Delhi. I welcome you, sir and ma'am. I'd like to call Mr. Kulnanand Joshi, Member Secretary, DCPCR, to also join us on stage and felicitate ma'am. I'd like to invite Ms. Nidhi Trivedi, Member DCPCR, ma'am, to please felicitate Professor Bajpai. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . I'd like to now invite Shri Anurag Kundu, the chairperson of Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights, to deliver the opening remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Honorable Justice Tara, Professor Bajpai, Member and Member Secretary of DCPCR, Madam Bharti Ali, Mr. Pranay Joshi, all panelists, and most important, the guests joining in person as well as virtually. Today, it's a third seminar in our series of what we call POCSO at 10. And we intend to use today and the preceding two seminars and hopefully upcoming seminars as a moment for us to reflect. A decade, as in a conversation with Professor Bajpai we were earlier discussing, a decade is a good time period for us to audit a statute, to say ABC has worked brilliantly and we should amplify it, to say XYZ has terribly failed. But the idea is great, so we need to perhaps only modify the design of it. Or to say that PQR is not required at all. It does more damage than it does good. Be that as it may, whatever that ABC, XYZ, and PQR is, all those answers can only emerge from all of us. Our reflections, our engagements, our disagreements, our questions, our flagging of concerns, and pursuit of greater understanding of where we are. And that pursuit of greater understanding comes from understanding what our children are going through. So today's seminar in particular focuses on the aspect of rehabilitation. And in that sense, we could not have found a more suitable Chief Justice than the Judge of the High Court to articulate for us what that looks like or what that means from a very different vantage point. So thank you very much, ma'am, for your time. I'm sorry, ma'am? I'm mistaken. Maybe I'm looking at the future then. So right now, the justice. But before we delve into that, I thought I will take 7 odd minutes to talk about some of the things that we have attempted. In some, we succeeded. In many, we didn't. And some of what we intend to do in perhaps the next 12 months or so. And the reason I mentioned all of these things is so that we can take questions from you and say, hey, you don't need to do ABC, or you can do ABC differently. And perhaps, who knows, you come and say, there's a scope for collaboration, let's do it together. And I'm sure that doing together will be better than us doing it alone. So in about 5-7 minutes, very quickly, one of the first things that we noticed, and Arushi in her presentation showed, the time taken for trial is terribly long. So we started mapping stage-wise, each time-mapped stage of the process. And we said, okay, what are the stages we can perhaps cut down time in? So what we found, and there's a right deal of perception about that FSL delays, forensic examinations delayed, and to that extent perception is right. But the perception is blown out of proportions. And what we found was, one of the biggest culprit was the fact that 63% of the reports whose forensic examination was completed and communicated to Delhi police were pending for more than 7 days for just collection. This is only 7 days. There were reports which were pending for 90 days as well. And that was all adding up to the timelines of the trial. Now, this is an easier problem to solve. Collection of report is not a terribly scientific, time-taking job that we can't solve for it easily. So we started raising hue and cry, as a commission should. We started taking authorities to task. We started flagging it. We started raising our voice that this is not acceptable. And there was not a platform that we didn't raise it as. 2 years later, today only 6% pendency is there for more than 7 days. So we have made a journey from 63% to 6%. And the root of that is that we could diagnose the system properly in saying, where is the breakdown, specifically speaking? So that's one. The second thing that we tried to do, and interestingly, the Supreme Court has also delivered an order last year in that context as well, but we've been chasing for about 2 years, is to standardize medical legal performer. Because we repeatedly heard from prosecutors, we repeatedly heard from lawyers that the medical legal performer and the wrong, or the not wrong, incomplete observations by the medical professional in that moment often proves insufficient for a prosecution, for a prosecutor to take the case to a logical conclusion. And it is not something that you can go back in time and find out more about. That moment, that day is gone, it's gone. So we started working with the health department of the Delhi government in revising this performer. When we were in advanced stages, we were lucky that Supreme Court also ordered exactly the same. But these guidelines, at least from Government of India, has been public domain since 2014. So what the Government of India had anyway said in 2014, we were trying to implement since for the last 2.5 years. Happy to report that that performer is now changed. And as of last week, all Delhi government hospitals are using the revised performer. What it does is it accounts for more observations on the part of the doctor that the prosecutor finds useful at a later stage. And not just a prosecutor, those observations are also useful in ensuring proper medical care for the child. So that's one of the other things that we try to do. The third thing, and in this we have the blessing of the Juvenile Justice Committee of the Delhi High Court, is a JJMIS, or the Juvenile Justice MIS. Because what we found was that there is no robust system of tracking the emotional, medical, social, educational, legal, financial well-being of children who are declared child in need of care and protection. There are tens of thousands of children. Now, without the use of technology, we can't track tens of thousands of children in a systematic way, in a way that allows us to organize our priorities fairly, which is why the Juvenile Justice Act, MIS, seeks to solve that very problem. Hopefully, 3 out of 8 modules are 100% ready, and about 2 modules are 1 week short of ready. Rest of it should be ready before this month closes. So hopefully in June onwards, we will see the complete rollout of this MIS and a much better tracking system of all children in today's context who are victims of sexual violence. We would know firsthand, and when I say we, I'm who's responsible for whatever to do with rehabilitation of the children, would know that ABC child medical is pending, and this child's compensation is pending, and this child's legal support or appointment of support person is pending, so on and so forth. So that tracking will make it more robust and fair. Towards the end, that's the other thing that we try to do. Now, this is not directly related to sexual violence necessarily, or however, that forms one small but important component, is we started tracking the attendance of children in Delhi government school. And we moved in the assumption that if a child is very frequently absent or consistently absent, the child is in some kind of trouble. Now, we don't yet know at this stage what trouble is that, but we assume that the child is in trouble. For example, this 17-year-old boy was consecutively absent for 7 days. And DCPC has access to attendance records through a technological platform of the government school students. And so we reached out to the student. We found the student had stopped coming to school because 7 days ago, the child was badly bullied, badly enough for the student to decide that I will never go back to school. Of course, we worked with the school, tried to do a bunch of things that are possible at school. The child has returned and is now attending the school and finds the school not heaven, but far less dreary. And that's a progress. Not enough, but that's a remarkable progress. Similarly, another 6-year-old girl who was not coming to school for about 7-10 days consecutively, we reached out and found that the girl stopped coming because she was victim of sexual abuse, in this instance by father. But her sudden attendance or absence from school and consistent absence from school became our earliest warning that something is terribly wrong. On finding out, we learned that this is a problem. We supported the child in ways we could, and we continue to. The child is feeling much better and has now started attending the school as well. Now she's in class 6th. The point I'm trying to make through these 2 stories is child's absence from school tells a story. And that story deserves to be heard, that story deserves to be looked into, and that story deserves to be rewritten. And none of that will happen unless we focus on consistent absence from the child. So my request, and since a lot of district child protection and child welfare committees are there, my request will be to please start focusing on attendance of all children you declare in need of care and protection, and a remarkable and a more insightful story and possibilities of remedial measures will start to emerge from there on. Anyway, so these are not the only causes, but we have so far identified 2 lakh children who are consistently or very frequently absent from the government schools. Reasons could be many. About 48% absence is explained by medical injuries and sicknesses, severe sicknesses, not the 1-2 din ki sicknesses. And so far, we have been able to bring about 55,000 of those children back to school. So the 2 stories that you heard is essentially 2 of the 55,000 stories. Our next goal is 80,000 in the next few months. We also organized, in the context of digital safety, we also organized, led by Nidhi-ji, several workshops for digital safety of children, particularly focused on schools, as children have more and more access to the devices, and that becomes crucial. That's part of our Smile Club. I will move towards the end and conclude in a minute or 2, in fact a minute. The study that we will be hearing about in 2018, and that one of the many findings was that children, or nearly half of the children, drop out of school as a consequence of sexual violence. And they struggle to get even admitted. So we got the Delhi government to amend the very admission policy and include that age or any such barrier shall not exist for any child who is in need of care and protection. That earlier used to be the case. And this happened based on the study that you will later hear about. I mean, I'll skip this part. It's a public domain. You can just find out from there. Lastly, and this is the next fight that we want to pick up, the POCSO rules 2020 mandate medical evaluation of children, particularly from the standpoint of sexually transmitted disease, with special focus on HIV. Now, in most of the cases we came across, that testing is not happening. And when that testing is not happening, 2 things suffer. One, from the criminal proceedings, because the degree of punishment, the penetrative becomes aggravated penetrative if the child tests HIV positive. That's on the criminal side. Today is not the day to discuss that. On the rehabilitation side, if the child is indeed infected by HIV, this child needs medical support. But we cannot provide this child a medical support unless we know to begin with that a child has a sexually transmitted disease, for instance, HIV. So with the help of CWCs and DCPU, we need to push to ensure that all children who are victims of sexual violence undergo STDs testing with special focus on HIV. Now, this is the next sort of battle we want to pick up and ensure that there are proper protocols in place and those protocols are properly enforced. My favorite singer is Bob Dylan, and I will judge anybody who doesn't know that. But Bob Dylan, apart from the fact that he writes very profoundly, in one of the best songs he wrote, and perhaps could be a fitting in the context we are in, he writes, "How many years must a one man have before he can hear people cry?" And he concludes by saying, "The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind." Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Professor G.S. Bajpai serves as the Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Delhi. Sir's career spans over 30 years of professional experience as an author, researcher, teacher, and administrator. At the instance of the Honorable High Court of Delhi, Professor Bajpai was appointed as amicus curiae for certain cases, and his report in Curran versus State introduced the concept of a victim impact report and the procedure for calculating and granting compensation. Notably, Professor Bajpai is also credited to have conceptualized the novel paradigms of victim justice, victim jurisprudence, and wrongful prosecution in the Indian context. Sir, given your expansive career and your work being done in the theme, I'd like to invite you to shed some light on the area of rehabilitation, where we are, and what you see as the way forward.
Very good morning to all present, and I acknowledge the gracious presence of Honorable Justice Tara, Judge High Court, Delhi, and also my thanks go to Mr. Kundu for having me today here, Mr. Joshi, Secretary DCPCR, and I have a lot of people to really acknowledge for their presence today, and all the persons who are present today on this occasion, where we are having this very important conversation on the POCSO's 10 years. Friends, I have only a couple of things to say because I am aware that in the technical sessions, you are going to take up some very important issues pertaining to the POCSO and especially the focusing on rehabilitation. The first thing to me is very important as I would begin my conversation on that I'm on some larger questions because we are observing 10 years of POCSO. What does it mean? To me, I'm always fascinated to the one branch of legal research that is the impact assessment of any law. An impact assessment is something which we do not know much in this country by way of any objective criteria. So when we are observing 10 years of this law, it is very important for us to empirically assess the success and failures of this act. Two very important reports are in the context. Recently released report by Bidhi gives a lot of ideas in terms of the stories of success and failures of POCSO. Huck's report also, Bharti Ali's report is there, which provide us a lot of insights as to where we are actually failing. But going to all those things, there are a couple of ideas. My first thing is that the journey of POCSO has a history because we have realized through different international instruments that the rights of child are very, very important, one. Second, they have not been given the due priority in terms of laws and adjudication processes in the country. And third, there is a need to have a specialized mechanism to really address the victimization and all kinds of sufferings rehabilitation needs to the victims of crime. Keeping those things in mind, we have brought several laws to this country, Juvenile Justice Act and POCSO, of course. But while Juvenile Justice Act was focused on the offending part of the children, this act was a victim-centric law. So victim-centric law has its, again, we need to understand the nature of law. I always believe, I am a law professor, I always go to the jurisprudence of the law. We have perhaps forgotten that the nature of POCSO law is very, very different. We have somehow reduced this law to a penal law, merely penal law. And we have created a mechanism of punishing people through this law. Many of you must be knowing the Supreme Court's harsh commentary on the practice of providing death penalty to the accused and the convicted people in the state of Madhya Pradesh. I am not on that because so this is one way of probably misreading the law. So nature of law means this law is a victim-centric law where we need to sort of do more on this thing. I was conversing with the chairperson and I said I'm a little surprised that POCSO is in discussion and we are not looking at the trial, evidence, conviction and all those things. Rather we are focusing on rehabilitation. So this is the true. I congratulate you for reading this particular dimension of this law in that sense. So first of all, that we need to probably make a victimological reading of POCSO. I always say this is high time that we should start reading our laws from victimological lenses. So far we have been reading these laws from punitive lenses. That is the whole problem is happening. So we have a system which is more keen to send the people behind the bar rather than providing solace, assistance, rehabilitation mechanisms to the victims of crime. And therefore, this 10-year audit and impact assessment of this law is something I am very inclined to do, and I have already said to the chairperson that this is something we can do in ground. And we need to understand that where are the bottlenecks and where are we failing? Are we giving the required rehabilitation and restoration ideas and strategies to the victims of crime on the ground are not. And secondly, the extent to which this act and the associated mechanisms have been successful in preventing victimization in sexual offenses, because probably this act is focused on protection and also prevention. So somehow we are lacking more and more on that, and probably we have made it another criminal law. So because people think that when arrest is made, case is put to the court, justice is done. Justice has several shades. I remember Urvashi's work, CSJ work, which we have done together. And they have come out with a unique conceptualization of justice, meanings of justice to the people and the stakeholders. So the law is same, but the meaning of justice to the victim, meaning of justice to the accused, justice to the community are very, very different. And we have a duty to sort of fulfill all these expectations through the law. That is another thing. So I am on victimization, prevention, and protection to be more and more focalized as far as the adjudication of this law is concerned. And I'll come to a more core question for which I do not have an answer. But I need to understand, because recently we have seen the India Justice Report has come out. And they are actually raising a very fundamental question, which is equally true in case of this particular law. They are saying that capacity of the criminal justice system to enforce the law is not sort of incommensurate with the tasks which are provided to these agencies. So we need to understand whether POCSO machinery, POCSO regime, has that required capacity to fulfill the expectations which are the part of this law or not. So when capacity is lacking, the goals shall not be or will not be achieved. That is the one problem. There is a mismatch. You have given an ambitious task to the limited machinery. I'll come to the machinery aspect, which I have just discussed in the morning. I am of this view that we have two types of laws. One, laws which are addressing social questions, social issues, like this is also a social legislation in a way. Our Domestic Violence Act, SC/ST Act, a lot of other acts, juvenile justice. We have, placed them in a sort of a bracket of social legislation. Unfortunately, in this country, the state of enforcement of social legislation has consistently been very, very poor for want of various reasons. Now, for instance, coming to this law, you will find that on the one hand, we have provided a criminal aspect to this law, where we have classified the offenses, where we have given role to the courts, special courts, and all that. We have also given a wider role to the victims and families, where their assistance, rehabilitation, restoration, compensation, their all kinds of measures of assistance will be provided. This aspect requires a lot of non-police intervention. We have made this act as if the police would change the destiny of this nation and the children. We have probably eliminated the scope of non-police intervention from the POCSO law. So if you are talking about those services, those needs which are to be addressed through this law, mapping of those needs, delivering of those services, rehabilitation requirements, a lot of non-policing measures are needed. However, we have not provided a clear-cut framework and the role of those agencies. That has been passed, support person. Somebody in the morning presentation, it was support person. As if we want it to be a sort of sideline kind of thing, sidelight of the act. This is the highlight of the act. But so I think unless you create the matching machinery to fulfill the non-policing objectives in POCSO, this aspect will continue to be in a kind of neglect. And it is happening. Therefore, I am saying that it is the time where we need to sort of focus on the the core aspect, which is the restoration and rehabilitation through this law. However, the term rehabilitation or restoration are not very explicitly mentioned. But if you make a conjoint reading of rules, different rules, Rule 20, especially 2020, they are providing a whole scope. I find that there are 7 kinds of very important needs. So sometimes we are looking at only the compensation as a sole solution. Compensation is a pecuniary, monetary arrangement. But I think the impact of victimization is required to be sort of addressed and mitigated through multiple ways, when not necessarily money or pecuniary help would be of assistance. So I think we need to go back to 1985 UN Declaration on Victims of Crime and Victims of Abuse of Power, where they have clearly identified the important needs which arise as a consequence of victimization. So for instance, in victimological parlance, we talk about the 2 kinds of consequences. One which is a direct consequence, which would give rise to the medical needs and other kinds of. I am also sort of saying which is important, that there is a secondary victimization. Primary victimization is by the offender or by the offending pursuits. Secondary victimization, the term secondary victimization I am using, which characterize the experiences of the victims of crime when they deal with the criminal justice agencies and experience the hardships and other kinds of negative experiences. So unfair dealing by police, prosecutor, and at other places, other medical agencies. Secondary victimization has not been adequately mapped as far as child victimization in this case is concerned. So there is a hidden facet of victimization as far as POCSO victims are concerned. And there is absolutely no mechanism to mitigate such kind of victimization. So 7 kinds of needs which would arise. Of course, we understand the mental health needs. There is a passing reference in the rule about. But problem is that it's fashionable to say that there are mental health needs. But who is interested with the function of mapping these mental health needs? And in this country especially, the issue of mental health is completely absent. Probably we don't have that capacity. Medical needs you can address because there is a doctor. But mental health needs, and in this kind of victimization, it is the mental health needs which become more and more prominent. Protection and other kind of shelter and other kinds of housing, those needs are very, very important. And also the education, because in the morning we have been shown they dropped out. Obviously there would be an impact on education thing. And family becomes another important point of victimization. They have multiple concerns associated with the victimization of children. And probably we need to create a comprehensive victim assistance strategy as far as POCSO victims are concerned. And I think there was a great opportunity, it is my view, in Rule 2022 to come out with a comprehensive victim assistance strategy. I am also a part of Victim Support Asia, and I am also the Secretary General of World Society of Victimology. And I had the occasion to look at the neighboring country, Sri Lanka. They have very recently created a National Victim Assistance Authority in Sri Lanka. In all other countries, it is there. In US, we know that NOVA has been functioning for a long, long time, National Organization for Victim Assistance. And they have a very important role, like we have NALSA. This is high time in this country to formalize the process of victim assistance at all levels. Because on the one hand, you are creating laws which are very ambitious in nature, and you are saying the state will compensate, you are saying that all kinds of things, but the institutions are missing. So laws are happening, institutions of laws are not there. So creating a mechanism like National Victim assistance authority at the central level and state level and district level. Like we have a legal, so a lot of work is being done by District Legal Service Authority at the moment. But I think there is a time that we should own victim assistance as a priority as far as criminal justice system is concerned. So that would provide us a lot of support in terms of institutional way to address these things. I'm aware that the report said whatever number of victimization is taking place, half of them are of very grave nature, penetrative sexual victimization, which means that the psychological consequences like anxiety, depression, and amnesia, and all kinds of things are very severe. But as I have said, those things remain unaddressed in most cases. So probably very good focus at the moment remains on the issue of compensation in this act. That is my whole issue. Compensation disbursement has been made lot easier, I would say lot efficient, because a special court can take cognizance, our report can be made, interim compensation is possible, compensation under 357A is possible. However, other forms of assistance which are very crucial to the victim rehabilitation is concerned, they are missing. And I think there is I would further reiterate that there is a scope to sort of introduce a framework in the rules which we have revised. So unless we make those changes in rules 2020, and later on those rules can be updated to incorporate some of these ideas, the things won't change. And lastly, I would say that again, I'll reiterate that this is the time to do a systematic empirical study on the impact assessment of POCSO to underscore the core issue of rehabilitation, which is very, very important. Thank you for your time.
I think you've raised some very important points here today, especially how we need to have a more victim-centric lens as we look at the Act today, and also how we look at rehabilitation and expand our own understanding of it. Excuse me. Our chief guest of the day, Justice Tara Vidasta Ganju, has been the judge of High Court of Delhi since May 2022. She graduated from Lady Shri Ram College in Political Science Honours and obtained her degree in law from Delhi University in 1995. Ma'am was appointed as an executive member of the Women in Law Litigation Association in 2019 and has also assisted the Delhi High Court as an arbitrator, mediator, and amicus curiae in third-party disputes. Ma'am, I invite you to address the room and also share from your own experiences about how you think we can look at mediation also maybe as a role of restorative justice in rehabilitation, if you could.
Good morning to all of you. Professor G.S. Vajpayee, Director, NLU, Mr. Anurag Kundu, Chairperson, Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights, my esteemed panelists, members of staff and staff of the Commission, distinguished speakers who will be here, are speaking today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me to the seminar today on rehabilitation of POCSO victims. You know, at the outset, while reading up and preparing for this, the first thing which came to my mind, I must share this with you before I go into the details, is the word victim. I found that this is a word which has complete negative connotations. And I possibly didn't have enough time to think up of a new word, but a survivor or something. Just the fact that continuously we are calling them a victim. They're not a victim, they're actually a survivor. So I feel that that's really, and just like the rehabilitation, the focus that you have today, the topic for focus that you have today, that's exactly in the same direction. Rehabilitation is also a positive thing. So instead of a victim, we may possibly call them a survivor. Please come up with another positive word, because what has happened has happened. They don't need to keep being reminded the fact that they are a victim. But anyway, this is more on sort of esoterically things. We all know that the Act was enacted in 2012. It has been more than a decade, and I see that you have been doing things, in relation to the legal framework which was provided under the Act to protect children from all sorts of offences, aggravated and otherwise, while safeguarding their interest. We have, no doubt, one of the largest population of children in the world, and protection of children is guaranteed by our constitution and also by us being a signatory to various conventions such as the UN Convention on Rights of the Child. But the impact of sexual abuse, which is why we are all here today, is really unimaginable. And it's not just the child, much like other problems, it's the entire family. I was sort of startled to read about a study conducted by the Delhi Commission, DCPCR, which was titled Mapping of Needs and Priorities. It's been conducted by you. It's called a study of child rape victims in Delhi. And as the issue was being raised a little while ago by Mr. Kundu, 42% of the children dropped out of school. I'm not sure how many actually went back, but it's heartening to note that you are making, taking steps in this regard. 50% of them suffered from physical illnesses linked to the rape. 81% were able to, of the parents were unable to, I beg your pardon, to fulfill the health needs of their children, the children who had been raped. And it seems that, I'm not sure how old this study was, but it seemed that only one child at the time of the study had actually gotten any compensation, and of more than 50,000. 99% of the children had either not gotten or got very limited compensation. 15% only, I believe. That's what the study showed. And also 38% had not received any legal aid. Now, while throwing statistics is easy, but the point is, the reason I bring this up is to look into why did this actually happen, and what are the shortcomings that we can bridge so that these things don't get these things don't get magnified. Law and the courts are not static. We are constantly my brother and sister judges are constantly passing judgments towards rehabilitation and development. But obviously a lot more needs to be done. And we do have the stringent provisions of the Act to provide for rehabilitation, to provide for punishment and etc. But along with that, rehabilitation, I feel, go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. The MIS portal, which was being talked about a short while ago, and I believe there's a Bal Swaraj portal as well, which has been set up by the child rights body, National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. These are all steps in the right direction, with an emphasis on rehabilitation of street children. I am informed that 15 states have notified this policy of rehabilitation of street children as well. Crisis intervention centers, child welfare committees, I'm sure everybody present here knows about all of these. All of these need to be monitored and seen. All of these efforts and policies which come up also need to be monitored in a way that they actually achieve the what they are set out to do. while through the courts, we can't constantly monitor these things, but from time to time we do pass directions. And but it is really up to each one of us who are in or form part of this entire body. It's not just the legal system; it's also all the various committees and bodies which are there for it. It's up to us to act in a way where we work hand in hand to make sure that the rights of the child and the rehabilitation works. As was pointed out earlier, process of healing is much longer for children who have suffered in this under, you know, have suffered under the Act. So they require much more longer intervention, and they also require intervention at every step. Whether it's restorative care in medical and a healthcare system, whether it's understanding of the educational, familial, and health paralegal needs of the children. We cannot, of course, as is quoted, repair or reverse the trauma caused, but we do need to aid the child and the child survivor, as I would like to call them, in regaining health and a regular life throughout, through their school, through their entire life. I know we can't have a complete life, but at least until they achieve a certain age, there should be a way of looking at how they are dealing with it. Just from, you know, being a parent and just as an adult, one knows that, you know, trauma has a way of coming back. It may get suppressed initially, but it does have a way of coming back, which is why rehabilitation is so important. I noted that the rules of 2020 have now come into force, and they do provide for a couple of additional positive, positive things in this field. There's a lot of awareness, dissemination of information, formulation of a child protection policy to look at prevention, not just cure. The support person, it's highlighting, the support person to submit monthly reports, special financial relief in certain contingencies, and of course various other changes, such as a preliminary assessment form which needs to be filled up. That, coupled with the new medico-legal form that was mentioned a long time ago, I think is going to be like one package which will help to have this, to progress the rights of this child or any such child. You wanted me to talk a little bit about mediation. I will take you up on that. I'll only just say that before I get to that, I'll just say a few, just a few pointers, just which come off the top of my head. I mean, rehabilitation, medical care and counseling. I mean, I know I'm not focusing too much on, you can all read what's there in the judgments, but this is more from the humane aspect of this. Medical care and counseling I've already talked about, but then much like the HIV and the fact that this is really very important. The HIV or any other sexually transmitted disease that this person may have contracted, this should be this should be right there, done in the beginning itself. Physical injuries, we know, and we horrified to read about victims whose injuries haven't healed for months on end, and then they really leave a permanent scar. So the only way they can deal with that, and in addition to the physical healing, is the mental healing. And unless both are there hand in hand, we can't really move further. The next step, once hoping they've healed at least to the best degree possible, would be providing an educational and vocational training to help them come back into the society if they have indeed been ostracized, which is often the case. They need to be self-sufficient. They need to get past the event, and they need to be able to just function as adults in their as and when they reach the age of majority. They just need to function as the rest of society. Even in the homes and shelters, I was happy to see that the education and vocational training which is being provided, and especially things like fine arts or music, and they were given a choice to take up something which would, of their own, a choice to take up something which would help them overcome this issue. I mean, I don't want to go into no nation can flourish without, this. I mean, we all know, we know all of this. The question is, what can each one of us do to help? I mean, if you know of anybody in your neighborhood, if you come across, please try and help. Please try and understand. They may not even come out and tell you that this has actually happened. It may be a modified version of it. So far as mediation is concerned, I wonder, I don't think we can really have mediation between the children and, of course, the offender. That would be sort of difficult. However, not mediation, but the facilitation which we use in mediation can be done. We use a facilitative process in mediation, and you can pick up from that, and maybe the various agencies which work for rehabilitation possibly can sit together and come up with suggestions and thoughts. So technically no mediation, but facilitative process for sure. I mean, I would have to end to say no nation can flourish if children of the nation suffer from abuse or vulnerability. So in as much as we focus on the rights and the laws of children, we also, and of punishing offenders, we also have to focus towards rehabilitation of these children. And I'm not going to at all call them victims. They are our greatest resource. There's no doubt about that. And unless there's a happy, healthy, and safe environment around, they cannot progress. This act and the rehabilitation does indeed, as I've mentioned, require the collective effort of stakeholders, government, non-government. I believe we are also joined by NGOs and other agencies, and which are doing a lot of good work, and I compliment them for all of that. Somebody is taking up the cause. So let us all work together to ensure that children of sexual abuse receive the care, support, and justice that they need to lead a happy and fulfilling life. I know we will do our bit, and let's all hope that we do so as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I do hope that we do all work together going forward. And thank you for answering my small question also there. Moving on, we have a short documentary film which captures the challenges faced by children in need of protection and care and the caregivers at every stage, the effect of those challenges that they have on the lives of these individuals, and what motivates the concerned departments towards urgent action to change the present situation for positive ground impact. For the matter of the film, I'd request the esteemed guests to please move in the audience chair so that we can have the documentary film screened.
2016 में मेरा पॉक्सो का केस दर्ज हुआ, जिसमें कि मेरे स्टेप फादर ने मेरे साथ बदसलूकी की, मेरे साथ नाजायज़ संबंध बनाने की कोशिश की, मेरे साथ ज़बरदस्ती हुआ।
This is the story of Sitara. Sitara was just 12 years old when she was sexually assaulted by her own stepfather at a place she had called home. But her case isn't a secluded one. As per the latest NCRB data, there were over 33,000 cases of child sexual abuse in 2021 alone. And this when studies suggest that only about 3% of children end up reporting the matter to the police in the first place.
मेरी बड़ी बहन ने मुझे बोला था, तुम्हारे वजह से घर में सब लोग रो रहे हैं, चिंता में हैं, अच्छा हुआ कि तुम यहाँ से चली गए और हमारे लिए तो तुम मर चुकी हो। तो परिवार ने तो साथ छोड़ दिया बिल्कुल।
Victim blaming and shaming become an unfortunate fixture in their lives. And even though the legal and policy framework is designed to protect, empower, and avoid re-victimization, the reality on ground may not be as encouraging.
पहले एक इंसान आपसे सवाल पूछ रहा है, फिर दूसरा इंसान पूछ रहा है, फिर तीसरा पूछ रहा है, फिर एक टाइम पे आपको एक बड़े से कोर्ट में लेके जाया जाता है कि आज आपको वो सारी चीजें बोलनी है जो आपके साथ हुई है।
Many victims suffer serious mental trauma through the tedious and long journey to justice. Sitara developed suicidal tendencies.
मुझे अपने आप को मारने का मन करता था और मैंने सुसाइड भी अटेम्प्ट किया। जो भी मेरे को नुकीली चीज़ मिलती थी उससे मैं अपने हाथ पैरों में खरोचती थी, अपने आप को दर्द देती थी।
As per a meta-analysis on child sexual abuse in India, there is a severe impact on interpersonal behavior and mental health, which includes depression, psychiatric disorders, poor academic performance, social withdrawal, and poor coping mechanisms. The more time it takes to identify mental health impact, the worse the long-term rehabilitation gets, straining an already stretched system even further.
क्योंकि ये 18 साल की हो चुकी थी तो उसके बाद ये होम में नहीं जा सकती थी वापस, तो इनको फैमिली को सौंप दिया गया। बहुत स्ट्रेस में वहाँ पर रही क्योंकि प्रॉपर एजुकेशन नहीं मिल पा रही थी। जैसे ही एज्यूम किया था कि मेरे को इस तरह से सभी का सपोर्ट मिलेगा, वो सपोर्ट नहीं मिला, तो वहाँ पर भी इन्होंने सुसाइड करने की कोशिश की।
उस टाइम पे मेरी एजुकेशन पे बहुत बुरा इफेक्ट रहा। इस पूरे जो भी मेरी जर्नी रही है इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा अगर मुझे किसी चीज़ का दुख है वो कि मेरे पढ़ाई में बहुत ज़्यादा रुकावट आया, जिसके कारण पहले जितना मेरे पास नॉलेज था, पढ़ाई करने की स्पीड थी, वो काफ़ी कम हो गई है।
Unlike thousands of children across the country who are still awaiting some tangible support, Sitara has been awarded a compensation of more than 2,80,000 by the special POCSO courts. But actually receiving that money remains an ongoing battle.
कोर्ट ने कंपनसेशन के लिए बोला है, पर जो मेरी आईओ है वो वेरिफिकेशन नहीं कर रही हैं, इसके लिए मेरा कंपनसेशन रुका हुआ है। हालांकि सारी डिटेल्स हम जमा देते हैं, फिर भी उस चीज़ को आगे फर्दर प्रोसीड नहीं कर रही है। डीएलएसओ के ऑफिस जाते वो बोलते हैं कि आईओ के पास जाओ, आईओ को ढूंढते हैं तो वो रहती नहीं है। अभी मुझे लगा कि अगर मेरे पास इनफ पैसे होते तो शायद मैं 10th के लिए मुझे इतना ज़्यादा टेंशन नहीं होती। तो जब पैसों की नीड है तब नहीं मिल रही है तो आगे जा कर के मैं क्या करूँगी उसको संभाल के रख के।
These children have the potential to shine bright. They are capable of succeeding in life and the system supports them on paper. All they need is for that support to reflect on ground as well.
I commend the team on the film, that documentary that they've made here, showcasing such a sensitive topic in such a beautiful way. But I also think we all need to understand and relook the idea of justice as we go home today. A study by Human Development Society and the Commission in 2018-19 was done, which showed various findings in terms of child sexual abuse victims or survivors. It focused on their needs and priorities. The study looked into their psychological needs, relationships with peers and community, status of education and health, livelihood challenges, compensation, legal aid and support person, future plans, priorities, challenges, etc. I would like to invite Ms. Shalini Chaudhary, Senior Manager, Human Development Society, to present the findings in the study, Mapping of Needs and Priorities, a study of child rape victims in Delhi.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. And good morning, all of you. Chief guest, Ma'am Tara Ma'am, and Dr. Vajpayee, Dr. Joshi sir, and Chairperson and member DCPCR. It's my pleasure to present my key findings of research report. Actually, 2019 में SDS ने एक स्टडी किया था, Mapping of Needs and Priority of Child Rape Victim, जिसमें हमने 100 बच्चों को इंटरव्यू किया था. इस 100 बच्चों के इंटरव्यू के लिए हमने ओवर 250 बच्चों से बात किया था. बट उसमें से कुछ फैमिली के लोग जो हैं वो अपना डाटा रिवील नहीं करना चाहते हैं, बहुत सारे इश्यूज़ के कारण. कि कुछ केसेस में उनके अपने पेरेंट्स हैं, फादर है, कोई नियर डियर रिलेटिव्स हैं, कुछ जगह वो कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ करने की कंडीशन में है, कुछ जगह वो थोड़ा वरिड होते हैं कि बच्चे की शादी होगी तो फ्यूचर में जाके उनको प्रॉब्लम होगी. तो सिर्फ 100 बच्चों ने का ही हम यहाँ पे इंटरव्यू कर पाए थे, जिसका हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव था टू अंडरस्टैंड द बेसिक नीड और माइनर विक्टिम. वो नीड जो है पर्सनल भी हो सकती है, फैमिली रिलेटेड या सोसाइटी रिलेटेड भी हो सकती है. सेकंड हमारा ऑब्जेक्टिव था डिटरमाइन द प्रायोरिटीज फॉर चिल्ड्रंस रिहैबिलिटेशन और सोशल रीइंटीग्रेशन. थर्ड वन जो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होता है, टू फाइंड आउट द नेचर ऑफ गवर्नमेंट एंड नॉन गवर्नमेंट सपोर्ट. आउट ऑफ 100 हमने 94 जो हैं वहाँ पे गर्ल्स लिया था और 6 जो हैं बॉयज़ था, क्योंकि बॉयज़ के साथ भी सेम सिचुएशंस होती है जो गर्ल्स के साथ होती हैं. अब ये कुछ मैम ने ऑलरेडी मेरा स्टडी से चीज़ें डिस्कस किया है, तो वो चीज़ें मैं दोबारा लेना चाहूँगी. इसमें 42% आप देखेंगे कि 42% बच्चे ड्रॉप आउट हुए थे सिर्फ रेप के कारण. 42 में से 9% बच्चे जो है वो स्टार्ट करना चाहते हैं अपने स्टडी फॉर फ्यूचर, कि वो चाहते हैं बट कर नहीं पा रहे हैं, प्लानिंग कर रहे हैं. और आप देखेंगे कि 4% बच्चे जो हैं उन्होंने रेगुलर स्कूल छोड़ के घर से पढ़ाई करना शुरू किया. यस, 55% जो लोग हैं वो चैलेंज फेस कर रहे हैं एजुकेशन को लेके. बच्चे के एजुकेशन के लिए डिफरेंट नेचर के चैलेंजेस वो फेस कर रहे हैं. वो सेफ्टी सिक्योरिटी से रिलेटेड है, क्योंकि बच्चे बाहर जाना नहीं चाहते हैं, उनके अंदर एक डर आ जाता है, फियर आ जाता है. लो फैमिली इनकम है, पुअर एकेडमिक परफॉर्मेंस है, जैसे बच्चे ड्रॉप आउट भी हुए हैं और कुछ बच्चों का एकेडमिक परफॉर्मेंस भी डाउन हुआ है. 79% बच्चे जो हैं वो हेल्थ नीड फुलफिल नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. आप देखेंगे कि 1/4 विक्टिम जो हैं वो सफ़र कर रहे हैं डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ फिजिकल इलनेस. ये हमारे इंटरव्यू में सामने आया था जब हमने बच्चों से बात किया और उनकी पेरेंट्स से बात किया कि हम गवर्नमेंट हॉस्पिटल में जाते हैं तो वहाँ बहुत टाइम लगता है, इसलिए वो लोग जो है वहाँ पे उनसे ट्रीटमेंट नहीं कराना चाहते. उनका फैमिली बैकग्राउंड फाइनेंशियली इतना लो है कि वो लोग प्राइवेट से भी बातें नहीं करना चाहते हैं, लेक ऑफ मनी है। थर्ड रीज़न उसमें एक आता है सोशल स्टिग्मा, क्योंकि हमारी सोसाइटी में जो सोशल स्टिग्मा है वो हेल्थ इश्यूज़ बच्चे जो हैं पेरेंट्स के साथ डिस्कस नहीं कर पाते, और यदि पेरेंट्स के साथ किया तो पेरेंट्स जो है वो आगे डॉक्टर या किसी स्पेशलिस्ट के साथ डिस्कस नहीं करना चाहते हैं। तो इस वजह से बहुत सारे बच्चे जो हैं वो हेल्थ फैसिलिटी अवेल ही नहीं कर पा रहे हैं। लाइवलीहुड की यदि बात करें, 57% जो हैं वो लाइवलीहुड रिलेटेड इश्यूज़, फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस, इन सब से जूझ रहे हैं। वो कहीं ना कहीं सारी चीज़ें लिंक टू वो अनफॉर्चुनेट जो इवेंट हुआ है उसके कारण हुआ है, क्योंकि वो लीगल इश्यूज़ को लेके, हेल्थ इश्यूज़ को लेके पेरेंट्स जो हैं वो कंटिन्यूसली जा रहे हैं, आ रहे हैं। उसके कारण क्या है, उन लोगों का एम्प्लॉयमेंट कम हुआ है, क्योंकि ये सब जो बच्चे हैं वो उस तरह की फैमिली के हैं जो जिनके पेरेंट्स डेली अर्नर हैं, नंबर 1। नंबर 2 के जिनका फैमिली का जो अपना सोर्स है इनकम का वो बहुत स्मॉल शॉप या कुछ इस तरह का काम करते हैं। यदि वो लीगल प्रोसीजर के लिए जा रहा है या हेल्थ रिलेटेड इश्यूज़ के लिए गवर्नमेंट हॉस्पिटल जा रहा है तो उसके एक्सपेंसिव भी बढ़ रहे हैं, सेकंड उसका टाइम भी जा रहा है, इसलिए उनका फाइनेंशियल क्राइसिस जो है वो रेप के कारण काफ़ी हुआ है। 41% बच्चे जो हैं वो स्किल ट्रेनिंग नहीं ले रहे हैं। यदि ये 41% बच्चे स्किल ट्रेनिंग लेते हैं तो फ्यूचर में एक एम्प्लॉयमेंट का सोर्सेज इनके लिए जनरेट हो सकता है। मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट, 2019 में जब हमने ये स्टडी किया था, सिर्फ 15 बच्चों ने रिपोर्ट किया कि उनको कॉम्पनसेशन मिला। वो भी कुछ बच्चों का उसमें कंप्लीट कॉम्पनसेशन नहीं था, और 85% ने बोला कि उनको कॉम्पनसेट नहीं किया गया है। अवेयरनेस की बात किया जाए यदि विक्टिम कंपनसेशन स्कीम को लेके, 60% लोगों को पता ही नहीं है कि इस तरह का कोई स्कीम है जिसका बेनिफिट वो ले सकते हैं। और जिनको मिला, 15 बच्चों को मिला जिनको, तो उसमें से उन लोगों ने कहा कि वो रिहैबिलिटेशन के लिए सफिशिएंट अमाउंट नहीं है, और वो भी काफ़ी टाइम के बाद मिला। जब उनको रिक्वायरमेंट था उस टाइम में वो नहीं मिला, बाद में मिला है। जैसा कि अभी हमने उसमें देखा भी, जब उस बच्ची को ज़रूरत है तब उसको वो अमाउंट नहीं मिला, वो अमाउंट बाद में मिला। 62% लोग जो हैं एक्सेस कर पा रहे हैं लीगल एड सर्विस। आउट ऑफ 62, 77% लोग सेटिस्फाई हैं अबाउट लीगल एड सर्विस कि उनको वहाँ पे अच्छे से डील किया जाता है। लेकिन सब लोगों का ये रहा कि ये बहुत टाइम कंज्यूमिंग है, और कहीं ना कहीं उनका फाइनेंशियल एक्टिविटीज़ पर वो रिफ्लेक्शन आता है उस चीज़ का। तो हमें इस चीज़ में भी ध्यान देने की ज़रूरत है। की चैलेंजेस, पुअर लिविंग कंडीशन, सिंगल पेरेंट्स के केस में हमें नज़र आया है कि जो सिंगल पेरेंट्स बच्चे हैं वहाँ पे वल्नरेबिलिटी ज़्यादा है, क्योंकि वो अकेले रहते हैं, डिपेंड होते हैं किसी रिलेटिव पर, और उस केसेस में वो रिलेटिव ही उनका हरासमेंट करता है। हरासमेंट बाय लीगल सिस्टम, क्योंकि वो बार बार उनको जाना स्टार्ट टू एंड, FIR हुआ, CWC गए, वो सब में उनका हरासमेंट फील करता है वो बार बार जाने से। एक्यूज के साथ उनको कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ भी बहुत हालात में करना पड़ता है, क्योंकि देखा गया है काफ़ी केसेस में जो उनके रिलेटिव होते हैं, कुछ लोग डर से कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ करते हैं, और बहुत सारे केसेस में देखा गया है कि एक्यूज जो है वो अरेस्ट भी नहीं हुए हैं। कुछ जगह डिसलोकेशन हो गया, माइग्रेंट करके कहीं से आए हुए थे फिर चले गए, उनको पता ही नहीं है कि वो कहाँ पे गए। कुछ एक्टिविटीज़ जो हमें विक्टिम के लिए करनी चाहिए, काउंसलिंग मुझे लगता है ये बहुत इम्पॉर्टेंट है। जो पोस्ट ट्रॉमा डिस्ट्रेस डिसऑर्डर जैसी चीज़ें बच्चों में होती हैं उसके लिए काउंसलिंग होना बहुत ज़रूरी है। कम्युनिटी आउटरीच एक्चुअली कम्युनिटी में नंबर 1 अवेयरनेस नहीं है, सेकंड 1 कि सोशल रीइंटीग्रेशन होना बहुत ज़रूरी है। जब हमने उनसे पूछा उनके पीयर ग्रुप या नेबर्स के बारे में, तो उस इवेंट के बाद, अनफॉर्चुनेट इवेंट के बाद, लोगों का जो बिहेव है वो उनके लिए चेंज हो जाता है। तो कम्युनिटी आउटरीच फॉर सोशल रीइंटीग्रेशन, फॉर अवेयरनेस होना बहुत ज़रूरी है। प्रमोशन ऑफ एजुकेशन बहुत आप लोगों ने देखा है कि अफेक्ट कर रहा है बच्चों का health care outreach, skill development training, compensation to victim, and legal aid service. और इसके साथ एक इसमें नहीं है सपोर्ट पर्सन, उसका भी हेल्प रेगुलर उनको मिलना चाहिए. थैंक यू सो मच फॉर गिविंग मी टाइम.
Thank you so much for sharing your brilliant findings in this study. Since the morning, we've been having a conversation in multiple forms, whether it be film, presentations, or keynote addresses. But a discussion or debate is not truly complete, and it's not true to its nature until the voices of those who work daily in this field on ground and see the good, the bad, the challenges is done in a proper way. Saying that, we now move on to our technical session, which is rehabilitation of POCSO victims, strategies, challenges, and way forward. To carry on this conversation, we have a panel of experts with us today who worked intrinsically on child rights and child protection to share their insights with us today. Joining us on the panel today, we have Mr. Pranat Kumar Joshi. Sir is the Secretary Shadra District Legal Services Authority since April 2022. He completed his BA program degree from Hansraj College and obtained his degree in law from Delhi University. He has also served as Judicial Magistrate First Class District Hardoi, in addition to being Principal Magistrate Juvenile Justice Board Hardoi. In April 2018, Sir joined the Delhi Judicial Services. He previously served as Metropolitan Magistrate, Dwarka North Southwest District for the NI Act. I welcome you on stage, Sir. I'd also like to invite Mohammad Salam Khan, Sir, to felicitate Sir. Thank you, sir. Next, we have Charu Makkar, ma'am. Ma'am is a child protection professional. She has over 25 years of work experience in the child rights field following her graduation in psychology and post-graduation in social work from Delhi University. She previously served on the Delhi Juvenile Justice Board from 2018 to 2021 and the Delhi Child Welfare Committee from 2009 to 2015. She was also appointed to the UNHCR Child Protection Functionary in 2015 to 17 and 2021 to 22. She is a national level trainer on the JJ Act 2015 and adoption regulations of 2017. I'd like to invite Arushi to felicitate, ma'am. Next, we have Ma'am Vidya Reddy. Ma'am is the Executive Director and Managing Trustee of Tulir Center for the Prevention and Healing of Child Sexual Abuse, a non-profit and non-governmental organization she co-founded in 2004. Tulir has worked closely with organizations in India and the South Asian region. Ma'am has served on the board of Childline India Foundation, the Union Ministry of Women and Child Development's Nodal Child Protection Agency, and is a member of numerous consultative and advisory committees on child protection, both internationally and with the state and central governments. I'd like to invite Nimisha Srivastav, Executive Director, CSJ, to felicitate ma'am. Our moderator for the session is Ms. Nimisha Srivastav, Executive Director of Council to Secure Justice. Ma'am has more than 10 years of experience in advocacy, capacity building, justice systems, rights-based law implementation, public policy development, research, stakeholder engagement, and mass communication across juvenile justice, child protection, gender-based violence, and restorative justice. She leads a team of lawyers, social workers, counselors, researchers, and administrative staff in providing access to justice to child victims of sexual abuse and children in conflict with law, with a focus on using restorative approaches. I welcome you, ma'am. I think we can. She's running a little late. Our final panelist is running a little late, so she will be joining us soon. We have Dr. Shipra Singh joining us in another, I think, 5 to 10 minutes. We can begin till then. Okay, I think ma'am is here, so I'll just introduce her. Our final panelist is Dr. Shipra Singh, who is an associate professor of psychiatry at IBHAS, New Delhi. She obtained her MD in psychiatry from TNMC and Nair Hospital, Mumbai. Ma'am has won several awards and recognitions, including the WCAP Scholarship in the Young Fellowship Program. She has over 40 publications in national and international journals and has reviewed for over 10 national and international journals. Dr. Singh is also actively involved in community mental health activities. I welcome you, ma'am. I'd also like to invite Ranjana Prasad, member DCPCR, ma'am, to felicitate ma'am.
With the MC's permission, we can begin our discussion. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really good to see such a full crowd on, what one would imagine to be, not such a scintillating subject, at least. I mean, it is for us, I think for many of us in the room, it is something that really gets us very, very worked up. All of us working on child rights. I know we do have limited amount of time with this really esteemed and knowledgeable and experienced panel today. So I will not waste much time and get into the nitty-gritties of the discussion. And I think as all of our the esteemed guests in the inaugural session announced, that it is really surprising that we are talking about rehabilitation, and it's come as a surprise. It's so interesting that the harm that is caused to survivors and how that can be really repaired, how we can help survivors to move on in a better way, has not become such a hot topic of discussion, and it has not been a huge part of the mainstream discourse, even though child sexual abuse as a phenomenon, of course, is in the papers every other day. There is frequent outrage. We saw a documentary a little while back about the story of this child called Sitara, who faced incestuous abuse, went through the system. That child is someone that CSJ, Council to Secure Justice, has worked with over a very long period of time. We have had emergency hospital runs, frequent negotiations with children's homes, shelter homes for adult women, just to figure out how she can move on with her life. But some very crucial aspects, I think, were highlighted very, very effectively by Sitara herself in her own voice. And what we ended the film on was her saying that कि मैं DLS से जाती हूँ, मैं IO के पास जाती हूँ, और फिर this is how it happens. तो अगर मुझे अभी पैसा नहीं मिल रहा है, जब मुझे अपनी 10th की पढ़ाई करनी है, and mind you, she's 18 plus, so there is already been a severe impact on her education. तो आगे जाके मैं वो पैसा रख के क्या करूँगी? This is the question that she asks, and this is the question I feel it's a crucial one that all of us gathered here today, particularly this esteemed panel, we should seek to answer. So my first question would be to Pranath over here. I think we have made huge strides in Delhi, particularly in terms of victim compensation. All of the civil society organizations working here, we experience this on a regular basis, that courts are giving compensation. There are DCW councils in courts. There are victims advocates of other organizations that are getting these compensation orders. But at the same time, it does remain a challenge, as we saw in Sitara's case, to really access that compensation. So what do you think are the innovative sort of approaches that can be used, that all of these different bodies work together well so that survivors can really access that compensation? I think
Thank you, Nimisha. First of all, good afternoon, everyone, dignitaries on the dais, dignitaries of the dais, audience. I would admit that sitting amidst such high-frequency intellectuals on and off the dais fills me with a sense of trepidation. However, at the very outset, I would like to congratulate DCPCR for coming up with this subject, which is undoubtedly the crying need of present times, but has been often brushed under the carpet, as we also realized in the address of Professor Vajpayee, when he admitted that he was taken by surprise after getting to know that the seminar is focused upon the rehabilitation aspect of the victims. Surprisingly enough, I'll tell you one more thing, that victimology has by and large been a neglected aspect as far as our criminal justice system is concerned. And the definition of victims was incorporated in our criminal procedure code as late as in the year 2008 only. Prior to that, the victim had remained a faceless person in our justice system. Now, coming to the question which you've asked me, it's a very pertinent question, and this is one situation that I personally have been facing regularly ever since I've taken the charge as Secretary DLSA. Right since the inception of whenever any crime takes place, as far as the POCSO cases are concerned, there are various scattered authorities which come into play. And there is no common mode of communication between the various stakeholders of the system. The most common reasons that I have personally come across when it comes to disbursal of compensation is that in some cases there are no bank accounts of the victims. In some cases, there are no Aadhaar cards of the victims, which is a mandatory requirement to get the bank account opened and operational. In some cases, there are no PAN cards available. In some cases, as we saw in the video, the IOs do not come for verification. And the reason behind that is that when the investigation starts, a particular investigating officer is appointed. But by the time it comes to disbursal of compensation, we have a series of different investigating officers. Some of them get transferred and various factors come into play. The SHOs get transferred. So these are practical problems, which hamper and which contribute to the delayed disbursal. One other reason is, of course, those cases wherein the victims move out of city, and remaining are the cases wherein victims themselves don't come forward due to the social stigma which is attached to frequent visits being made to the courts. Now, I believe that given the present structure of POCSO rules and the present mandate, support persons can play a significant role in ensuring the timely disbursal of compensation, not just compensation, but various other remedies that is available in the law. Presently, the appointment of support person is left to the discretion of CWCs, and it is only given only when the circumstances, in their opinion, deem it important. I personally feel that support person must be indiscriminately appointed in every case of POCSO victims. Because right from the moment when the prosecution starts, there has to be someone to guide the family all throughout the process. We understand that ours is a country which is not very much legally aware. And there has to be a helping hand to assist the family when it comes to dealing with procedural rigmaroles. So in such cases, I believe support person can come very handy. Apart from that, I also believe that as far as the role of investigating officers are concerned, there should be a proper maintenance of the data as far as the victim's identity is concerned and the other particulars are concerned. When it comes to accused, we see that there is a proper format of an arrest memo when an accused gets arrested. You know, all the details of the accused are taken on record. Not only details of the accused, but details of the nearest relative of the accused are taken on record, and the proper record is maintained. Apart from that, there is a separate line of communication available with different police stations all across the country, which makes it very easy for the police to trace the criminal if he absconds to other places. So in the similar manner, we can think about having a system wherein the details of victims, the family of victim, the nearest relative of the victim, some sort of data is available with the police at the police station, so that when the victim goes missing or it becomes difficult to trace the victim or the IO is transferred, there is some data which is available at the police station which can be made use of so that we can reach out to the victims in timely manner and necessary procedure can be followed. As far as in those cases wherein victims move to other places, if we have some sort of communication channels open along the lines of what I just mentioned in cases of accused, we can take the help of local police station concerned and get in touch with the victims who have moved to their native villages. So I think, number one, if I put it succinctly, number one, the mandatory appointment of support persons and maintenance of data at the police station of victims are two key areas we need to focus upon to ensure speedy disbursement of the compensation. Apart from that, there has to be an established and open communication between various stakeholders, the CWCs, the SJPUs, DCPCR, the legal aid service authorities, the police stations, the hospitals. So these all should have an open communication channel with them, a dedicated line of communication that could ensure that no piece of information goes missing and no information is ignored by any other authority. So I think if we focus upon these three areas, the problem could be addressed to a much larger extent.
Thank you so much. Those are, I think, very crucial points that you have made. Two things. I would now like to come to Charu, ma'am, because, you know, as former, Charu, sorry, yes, we have had this discussion before. As, you know, someone who has seen the law from both sides, as a member of the JJB and the Child Welfare Committee, you know, Pranav spoke at length about the role of the police and the role of support persons. So if you could come in about that, you know, like how can CWCs appoint a support person for every POCSO case? How do you see that proceeding? And one point, as an organization that works as support persons, I would say that, you know, support persons, I completely agree that, you know, I think like 50% of our times goes in following up with investigating officers for compensation. But how they respond is also another very crucial thing. My staff is like looking at me and smiling. Yes. So that is another, I think, very crucial issue that we do need to look at. So, you know, if you could weigh in, please, Charu.
Yeah. Thank you, Nimisha, and warm welcome to everybody on the dais. And amongst the audience. So as you said for the compensation, it's important, it says in the POCSO Act that a support person has to be appointed. I'd like to point out one thing. The Act has said that only cases in 3 situations the child is to be produced before the CWC. So that's a small percentage which is produced. What about all the other cases which include the consensual romantic cases, in those cases where the child has agreed to go back with the parents? Are those cases even being reported in the CWC is the question. Many a times the IOs are not, the concerned police station, they are not bringing to the notice of the CWC about these cases. So when they are not aware, how do you appoint a support person? One. And most importantly, what really needs, what is important here is about the child who has gone back home. What is the mechanism to see whether the child is safe, is rehabilitated and reintegrated back? Maybe this child is facing further trauma at home. There is continued violence. We don't know till there is, we are able to reach that child. So it becomes very important for the CWCs to ensure that they ask the concerned police stations to report all cases under POCSO to them. Secondly, I would also like to say for the support person that they are there to help the children, and they need to help in the child and the family in the court processes, ensuring and working along with the RCC lawyer in ensuring that for the compensation part, the applications are filed timely and followed up. Regarding, there's another point where, the onus of providing the documents comes on the victim and her family. That is a very important point wherein these, the family and the child, they are not aware, they do not have the required documents. So why is it that these state documents that are required cannot be asked by the state authorities themselves directly from the concerned authorities, rather than asking the child and the family to run around and give? Many a times one observes delays only on these grounds. My friend here mentioned about the issue of bank accounts. I'll just add one point there, which is, it has been seen in many cases when the child and the family goes, maybe along with the support person, to DLSA, and they are asked, yeah, bank account hai, to haan ji, bank account to hai, ye rahe details, ho gaya kaam, kuch aage kaam karne ki zarurat nahi hai. अब वो पता चला सब्सिक्वेंटली जब बैंक ट्रांसफ़र होना है मनी का, वो मनी नहीं ट्रांसफ़र हो रहा क्योंकि वो बैंक अकाउंट जो था वो स्कूल के लिए खोला था विद 50,000 उसकी लिमिटेशन. So it's important to ensure that the child gets another account opened in which this money can come in. And also CWCs should go ahead for this special relief 10,000. That I feel is something which CWCs should ensure, but this again can only be done if cases are being reported to them through the concerned police station. So with that, at least the immediate expenses that the family and the loss of income of the family can be covered.
So again, there is so much focus on these terms. There are these terms which are used, right? Rehabilitation, re-victimization, child-friendly mechanisms, really. So when we are saying that, अच्छा एक बैंक अकाउंट है तुम्हारा, लेकिन दूसरा बैंक अकाउंट खोलना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि ये 50,000 की लिमिट है इसमें. I mean, we are just sort of creating more and more and more sort of, it's like this obstacle course for, the child survivor, right? So can we think about some system which makes it easier for them? Like, it is the onus, I suppose, as you said, right? The onus comes on the child then. The child and their family who are in many cases, they are daily wage earners, right? And they have to lose an entire day's wages when they come to the system. So could we perhaps think about a system where the child does not have to open another account? Maybe the schools and the banks and the DLSA talk to each other, and the CWCs, obviously, talk to each other and figure out some sort of way. Is that a possibility? Yeah, we will just do this and
If I
then
may
move.
respond to that, in fact, I worked on that aspect in my district. I got in touch with the bank, which is in Karkaduma courts. I talked to the manager and I discussed this issue. They worked it out. They said if any recommendation comes from the DLSA regarding disbursal of amount, then we are ready to relax the norms of the banks.
Okay.
So we can do that. But that happened with only one bank. So like I said, we need to have channels of communication open with all the stakeholders involved in the system. We can have a panel of banks available with us who can, relax their rules when it comes to disbursal of compensation, who can, in a very timely and fast manner, open and operate the bank accounts of such children. So we can, we need to have some panel available with us, which we can always fall back to in times of emergency needs. So we can have panel of hospitals available with us, we can have panel of psychiatrists available with us, we can have panel of educational institutions available with us, we can have panel of banks available with us. So these are certain key agencies which are involved as far as the compensation aspect is concerned. So if we are able to do that and actualize this concept, then I think this would lead to a remarkable progress.
So DCPCR, we are, we have now a concrete action plan for moving forward. Vidya wants to. Sorry? Absolutely.
Thank you. So I come from Tamil Nadu, and we have a completely different system on compensation there. We have something called the Tamil Nadu POCSO Victim Compensation Fund, which is with the Directorate of Social Welfare. And when the court passes an order, the order goes directly to the directorate, and they transfer the money to the family. So DLSA is not involved, the police are not involved. This actually only started rather recently, and there's a little bit of history to this. Till 2018, when we had filed an RTI asking how much of compensation the courts across Tamil Nadu were giving, there are 32 districts, now 38, we found out that there were only 240 victims, and I have this problem also using the word victims, victims who got compensation from 2012, from 24 districts, which was atrocious. So then we had to, of course, bring it to the notice authorities, and they started this process. In 2018, the figure jumped. The number of compensations awarded jumped. However, the process of application for compensation was still in a bit iffy. The police were applying because they had a copy of the FIR. Families didn't know about it. DCPUs were in a state of somnolence. CWCs in a further state of somnolence. So it was kind of difficult. Then in 2020, when the department realized all these teething problems of just application, they made it very clear with the POCSO High Court Committee resolution that the DCPUs, once the FIR is received by court and the court awards compensation, interim compensation, they will give it to the DCPU, and the DCPU will file the application for compensation, and then it will go to Director of Social Welfare. But there again, there was a problem because DCPUs were still rather tardy about the whole thing. So from February this year, the High Court has issued a SOP that the order of compensation will be given within 5 days of receiving the application. And if it's not received in 5 days, the court suo motu will take cognizance and pass orders. So that whole delay to get negated there. And then it's given directly to the Director of Social Defense, who will transfer the money. So that's a system that is absolutely there, because the courts was of the opinion, the High Court, if we have decided on the compensation, what is their need for verification further? And all that you need for interim compensation is just an FIR, really speaking. So you don't need the ML reports, nothing. With regard to bank accounts, we've had occasionally a few problems, but there the court has passed orders, in fact, when, say the family is living on a pavement, and they have no access to even get a Aadhaar card to get a bank account. The court has passed orders, and there's been possible to open accounts. Yeah. There's one more comment I just want to make before I give the mic back to Nimisha. You know, we're talking about the word rehabilitation. It's interesting that I've not heard the word reintegration at all so far in this morning's conversation. And if you look at an audience of about 120 odd people here, and if you extrapolate the statistics about sexual violence against children, there are at least 20 to 30% of us in this audience who have experienced sexual violence. And we're here to live, and we're here to tell the stories. So I think it's very important to understand that when we are talking about rehabilitation, reintegration, victims, survivors, people who've experienced abuse, it's not something out there and, you know, it's us and them. It's very much on our doorsteps. And I think we need to acknowledge that when we talk about it, that there is resilience in all of us, and we do manage to get over a lot of things.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for bringing us back to that very, very crucial aspect, Vidya. Just to take on one point from what you were saying, I think this is a question that we do need to maybe mull on at least, is does the police really have a role in this delivery of compensation? Do we need that IO verification at all? But taking on that point about reintegration, I would now like to bring in Dr. Shipra. You know, we had a small film play out here before where this survivor, who is now an adult, she spoke about how she indulged in self-harm multiple times. Now, this was a case of sexual abuse within the family. And again, you know, again, how she spoke about how her family has completely deserted her, you know, they have completely disowned her. And as a result, you know, she has found a way to move on, but at the same time, she has gone through this excruciating process of trying to harm herself over and over and over again, being in one shelter, then becoming an adult and not finding a place to be really. Because, you know, once they turn 18, it's like we cross this arbitrary line, and but then there are aftercare homes with their own conditions. And if you don't find an aftercare home, then what do you do? If your family is not willing to take you back, what do you do? So what are the short-term and the long-term sort of impacts of sexual harm that you see? And you know, how have you dealt with it in your experience? If you could see that mic.
Okay, so regarding sexual abuse, it would have different kind of impact. It would differ apparently what is the age of the kid. So somebody experiencing sexual abuse at the age of say 20 and somebody experiencing at the age of say 5 or 7, it would have different impact. Other thing that you mentioned, that where did the abuse happen? Was it a close family member or somebody outside? So I'll limit this conversation to basically kids as of now. So there are multiple short-term impacts. A child, if it is happening in a very small child, say less than 10 years, 8 to 10 years of age, the child might have initially difficulty in understanding what is happening to him or her. Okay, difficulty in experiencing attachment. The child might be having difficulty in, you know, concentrating at studies. First of all, there is confusion. What is happening to me? Then depression, anxiety, difficulty with studies, difficulty with socialization with friends. And when it is happening inside the family, it becomes a grave problem, because the family is something the child is looking forward to in case of distress. Now, if the family is not supporting, it is like the child needs some kind of support. In terms of child psychology, we can say there's something called predictability and continuity that a child needs for a proper development. So he or she should be able to understand the consequences and how to react in those conditions. So if the child is unable to understand, in which situation can be harmful or which situation can be safe for him or her, the emotional dysregulation can happen. As you mentioned in that case, the child was later on in the later life, she was experiencing distress, and secondary to that, the person got involved in self-harm, multiple self-harm. So this is something very common. And in my experience, when we see these cases a lot, so they come with the parents, get the child, or say even adults also, with this problem that multiple self-harm, not listening to us, behaving in irrational, erratic manner, and in the background of it, you can get in the history that somewhere the person has been experiencing sexual abuse. Maybe happened in the early childhood also. And the consequences you are seeing later in the adulthood also. The trauma that the person has faced and he or she has not been able to process till now. It has far-reaching consequences. Again, like if we were talking about this one aspect, like what are the mental health issues? The second thing is about re-victimization. Now, these kids are more prone, if not dealt adequately, in not able to process their trauma in a timely and in an adequate manner, and with the appropriate support that they require in this case, from the family, from, say, society also. I'll just give you an example here. I recently, I think a few weeks back, a child was brought to me with, CWC personnel only. She was in, I think, 8th or 9th standard. Now, the abuse had happened few months back. The main concern of the child was, she was talking less about the abuse, talking more about my family members keep on commenting on me. That why did you leave the school? We never told you to go out on your own. You should have told somebody. So it was the constant kind of comments from the mother and the father that she was facing. Nobody to turn towards who can understand, okay, she might have done that, but now the condition is that she needs some kind of support. So that she was not able to get. In this case, it was difficult for us also to judge whether is the child living in a, say, healthy environment? Right. Or is it like she is even reminding her of the same thing again and again, brings re-victimization. She is experiencing the entire thing again and again in her mind. So we try to deal with these things with the child and as well as with the family members. Here, with all these factors involved, both the child and the family members have equal role to play. And I'll just summarize that the consequences are, again, these are like, can happen. You can see those in late adulthood also.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shipra. And it is, I would like to ask Vidya again. She spoke about how this family kept on reminding the child about the abuse, saying why, and victim blaming, right? Like, why did you leave the school, or so on and so forth. And I think we do see that in our work really often, right? Like when the families who we are supposed to really work towards restoring the child to are the ones who are piling on to that entire feeling of victimhood. And really causing more mental trauma to the child. And then that sort of places us in a difficult position as to what should we advocate for when we are advocating for the child. So, and again, we are looking at the question of reintegration. So then how do we as a society and as a legal system, because both are interplaying with each other, how do we deal with that?
So from our experience, we do our case management only in Chennai, though we are consulted by organizations across Tamil Nadu. In our experience, it's the easiest working with the child. It's the most difficult working with the family. And you just have to work with the family because at the end of the day, the child will be with the family in most instances. And so, and how the family processes what has happened is going to impact the child. So what we do is, we work a great deal with the family actually rather than the child, because very often, in fact, when there are very small children involved, there is very little you can do with the child if the family is not on the same page as you. So we work a great deal with the parents, and then through them work with the child. We may do a little bit of work with the child. Now, when it comes to the older cases, which is the teenage cases, where there has been consent and there's mutual romance, all I know, in those sort of situations, there's tons of victim blaming on the child, especially the family, which most often doesn't approve of what happened. And there again, we have, in fact, just yesterday, we had this case where this 16-year-old girl, she went off to the boy's house and she insisted that they get married, and the boy's family is panicking because they know about 18 years, and so they brought the girl back, and we had to talk, and the mother was very worried in case this girl gets pregnant and she gets married. So we really had to work with the family to say that, you know, and then the girl, to say that there's no point you getting her married because you're going to face the law then. You just have to work with her to understand that she has to be around till 18 before they decide. And we have also noticed one more thing in these mutually romantic relationships. If that relationship was allowed to take its own course, they would peter out like all teenage relationships. They'd fall by the wayside in 2 weeks, 2 months, a little while. But because at that age, where they feel that everyone is against them and that, you know, it's us against the world, the only other option then for them is to elope and to get married. So I think it's really important that the adults around a child relook at what their attitudes and their interventions are going to be to help the child regain a sense of well-being and equilibrium, really.
So just sort of taking on from that, and this is, I think, for all panelists, really. I think what is coming out over and over again is just listening to the needs and the story of the survivor. How can the system do that? Is the law doing that? How can the system do that? How can the system do that better? I think we can start with Dr. Shipra, if you'd like. Especially, say, for example, in your case, you know, you work with CWCs and court orders and everything, and you see how children are going through the system. So, and again, as civil society organizations, we see how expensive mental health facilities really are, mental health support really is, and the need is so huge. So how do we sort of create that system which is responding to all the needs?
It's a difficult one, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I can point out a few problems that I have been seeing in the system as a mental health expert. When these kids are brought to us, the problem is, one thing that I have noticed, that a child is brought and they means the liaising between the child is accompanied by the parents or the CWC personnel. So it takes a very long time to establish a rapport with the child and to get them open up, like what are their concerns. So I spent maybe 45 minutes or 1 hour talking to a child, and I call the child maybe after a week for reassessment and see what is happening with him or her. So next time they present to us on some random time on which day I am not available. So the child has to re-go the entire process. So that, I think, if that kind of liaising can be present. The other thing that Madam just mentioned about the romantic relationships. So there, I think there's a lot of role of the family members to be educated. Even from our part also, we can, because otherwise also not POCSO cases, but otherwise also we receive such cases. Parents bringing to us that the girl is not listening to us and she's having such affair, or the boy is having affair with females or doing such kind of activities. So from our part, we can start educating And plus, I really don't know about the legal system, how we can incorporate these things. But at the level of society, I can say that we can start imparting education about, first of all, the laws also in the schools. Okay, having a relationship, having an emotional kind of bond with your colleague or with your friend, maybe it's fine. Actually, it's a developmental process. As far as child psychology is concerned, a child goes through various stages and needs to go through those stages to have a proper self-identity, a proper personality. So there is nothing wrong with that, but maybe if they are more aware about the laws, maybe from the school itself, it might help. So from that point of view, parent education from school side, from our side, whenever they approach us, that might help, and appropriate information about the ongoing laws also.
Yeah, absolutely. More awareness on the laws, and I like that point that you said about, like how do we take these conversations to the legal system? So on that note, Pranath, please give us your thoughts, and we will be opening for questions soon. So
look, I believe justice is not what is done in the courts. It is not limited to the courts. Our constitution speaks about social justice. And when it comes to POCSO cases, social reintegration of victims or survivors is a key element of the social justice. Now, we must take into account the holistic picture of the justice when we talk about providing and taking care of the needs of such victims of POCSO. Now, you see, what happens usually is that there are many factors and many players involved when it comes to, ensuring a safe environment for a child to survive and addressing the grievances of child who is met with such unfortunate incident. The law can play a big role in ensuring all safeguards are put in place. See, law should be read with an emotive angle. That is what I have always believed. What law, after all, does is, apart from doing other things, it regulates human affairs. It regulates human-to-human relationships. So unless we read the emotional angle behind the cold, dead letters of law, we cannot do complete justice to the parties. We must take into account what would happen to a child who has been brought as a victim. And two references to romantic relationships have been made. What would happen to such CCL, if I may refer to, who has been victimized by the system merely because, that person chose to follow his heart, his or her heart.
Absolutely.
So the law must take into account these emotional angles, unless the law is interpreted by the superior courts in such a fashion to accommodate the various emotions, the hormonal changes, if I may speak along medical lines, which result into often creating romantic feelings about the other persons. So unless the law accommodate all such emotional angles into, its operation, it will be extremely difficult to cater to the needs, emotional needs, physical needs to the children. As far as legal needs are concerned, I think we are doing almost fine in that aspect. What is more concerning and what needs to be more focused
You have 30
upon,
seconds more. Sorry, I have to. Yeah.
So I'm just concluding. We need to focus upon the extra legal needs of the child, and law is capable to take into account and accommodate all of that.
So the law will take all of this into account, and DLSA will ensure that all judges are trained accordingly.
Undoubtedly, without doubt.
Right? Yeah. Vidya. Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to tell you this really interesting situation which has happened in Tamil Nadu again since last year, where the courts and the police have passed circulars and resolutions that no person accused, usually the boy, in a mutually romantic relationship will be arrested. They will be issued a 41A. These cases are closed. They're being closed with alarming alacrity. In fact, a little too expeditious for my liking, because some of them may not be truly consensual. But this is with the approval of the courts and the police. And it was it's a very interesting experiment. It started off with one particular geographical area in Tamil Nadu, where the IGP of that particular area thought it was a waste of time and energy pursuing these cases when anyway everybody's going to turn hostile and go to court, and they kind of evaluated it in terms of whether it's worth it. So they do not arrest, they process. Because of Section 19 in POCSO, they have to file a case. So they do file a case. Person is not arrested. In fact, they invited us to do a documentation of these cases. And it was so heartening to see actually go down, and we went down south, went into all these rural areas, etc., where we actually visited families where 41A had been issued, where the kids were pregnant or had babies or they were married, and because they'd gone to the hospital, a case had been filed. And one girl, in fact, had stopped lactating because she was so anxious as to what will happen to her husband. And when she realized that he was not going to be arrested at all, it was like a whole sea of change in her. Within a week, she started feeding the baby. So I think the impact of these things needs to be understood, and whether it's really worthwhile. The Supreme Court itself has said there's no need to arrest half the time. So we really need to, pick and choose our battles with POCSO, because what's happening is, across India, I think judiciary is being given targets that you have to dispose so many cases in this month. So what the easiest thing to dispose of is these romantic cases. So at least when you concentrate on the fact that these cases are not going to be arrested, the attention is really focused on the real POCSO cases. Another thing we've done in Tamil Nadu is that the romantic cases, as well as cases where there is a marriage involved, have been shifted to the Mahila courts. They are not in the exclusive POCSO courts. So the exclusive POCSO courts only concentrate on the real POCSO cases, and the Mahila courts just kind of, an industrial style production line sort of thing, dispose of these cases as soon as possible.
Thank you. Charu, you have 1 minute, and then we will take some questions.
I like to... Hello? Yeah, I think I'd like to start firstly by saying how much do we hear the children when they come? What is it that we are hearing? If we take the various stakeholders, what is the experience the children are getting? The first point is always the police. How is the police, and I'll focus only on the consensual romantic cases, because POCSO, the other POCSO cases of younger children, rape cases or sexual assault or abuse, if you don't look at that, just focusing on the consensual romantic cases, what is the first point of police? What are their reactions? What are their comments to the child? And how the boy is, 50% part of that consensual relation is put in a criminal case, because of which he ends up having issues, self-esteem issues, staying, all of those issues. Secondly, what are we, while in the whole process, are we looking at the dignity and the well-being of the child? What about the identity of the children? Many cases, the girls are kept in the children home, and many a times against their wishes also. Because the CWC has thought it is, no, this is not correct, she needs to be counseled. They have taken the decision for that child. Similarly, other authorities, the District Child Protection Unit, when preparing an SIR, how much of an input is it really putting in trying to really understand the situations which could have prompted for this child to go into a relationship, elope, or marry this boy? Those are points which are really needed if we are looking for rehabilitation back into the family, because maybe the child was living in poverty, was maybe experiencing violence, was out of school. Yeah. If we do not address those issues, it would come to the same situation again.
So, absolutely. Thank you. I'm sorry for cutting everyone off, but I think listening to the child at every single step, in all of those small nitty-gritty, everyday details of the judicial processes, just listening, I think, has come out as a very key point. Questions, if there are any, from the audience? Sir, and then ma'am, please. Sir, go ahead. Can we get a mic to them, please?
I'm Ashwini Kumar Bali from DLSA East.
Okay.
I just want to, my voice is...
Yeah.
Am I audible, please? Yes, please. I'm a practicing lawyer, so I'm just asking specific question because this POCSO Act is related to offense against the children. My first question is about the age, because as in this particular modern age.
Only, please.
18,
only one question.
One question only.
Yeah,
Two, because they are related with this. Because mental health as a.
Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Vidya Reddy has also told about this because they can be related to family courts because generally in consensual relationship, because children from school itself, they are very much physically active and they are from a age after 16 to 18 specifically. Trauma faced is by the children from the 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. But from the 16 and 18, generally it is a considered decision taken off. After that, it comes under offense when they are reporting it, and there is a misuse of it all. I'm asking what mental health system, because parents also need for counseling. As the child needs the counseling, parents also need the counseling. There is no step regarding this because, as you told, parents are goading the child. Why you went out of school or what for? They are blaming the child, and sometimes mostly because marriage as institution is failing. Marriage as an institution is failing. So generally they live in from the age of 16 itself, or from there on, they are in consensually having romantic relationship. So what about we are addressing for mental health and as far as the age? That is what my question is.
Okay. Yeah, I think we'll take a couple of more questions and then we will go to answer. Yes. I think there's a lady here. Yes. Yeah, below. This side.
Hi, I'm Lavanya from Samarpan Homes. And while we've been talking about sexual offenses in the context of heterosexual relationships, with all this conversation on LGBTQ, UI, and whatever more alphabets have been added, has that been factored into? I'd like to hear from a legal perspective later, but particularly from Ms. Vidya, from Ms. Shipra and Ms. Charu. Just a comment on this, whether this has been factored in, and is there any plan to take this forward? I ask this question because eventually, right now, the cases may not be so many, but when we do get kids into our homes who have been victims or consensual in this, and then they're assigned to a home, it's very difficult for us at CCI to be able to cope with these children, because then it's not a separate home that they're put into. So how do we cope with this whole thing? So it's in that context. Yeah, it's with that filter that I asked this question, and I'd like to hear from each of them if possible.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Swati, yeah, last question we'll take and then we can go for answers. Yeah.
My question is from one of the experiences that I had at CWC. I want to ask about the disbursal of interim compensation and how that expenditure has to be made. In one of the cases, we noticed that interim compensation was 2.5 lakhs. And later we learned that the father arbitrarily withdrew the money. I think it was from your NGO itself. Arbitrarily withdrew the money. And then we had to pass an order from CWC directing the bank to disburse the money whenever CWC directed them to. So I would like a clarity from DLSA about that. How that has to be disbursed. Not only disbursed, how that has to be expended.
To answer the questions, because we will need to wrap up, I think, in a couple of minutes. So just 1 minute to each panelist. I think Dr. Shipra, if you can just answer about the mental health for family. And then,
when a child is brought to us, mostly we ask a family member also. Okay, it's not that mostly they are accompanying, the family members are accompanying. And when we take the history from the child, it's not just the child. We take complete details from the child as well as the accompanying person also. And we prefer that it's mostly the primary caregiver, mother or the father only. Okay, so if we feel that there is a need, that there are certain issues with the family members also that need to be tackled, like the case I described, where we felt that, okay, the comments that the mother is making might be hurtful or might be problematic in the management of the kid. So in that case, we have a team of, say, psychiatrists clinical psychologists, and psychiatric social workers also. So then we guide them accordingly that this person also, even the family members would also be incorporated in that with the, mostly in this case, would be the psychiatric social worker about the psychoeducation aspect of the sexual abuse part. So
there
that
are
also is
systems,
dealt.
there are systems, but clearly, of course, they are limited in resources, limited resources. Charu, I will go to you for the question regarding LGBTQ children. If there have been any experiences, and please be quick.
Yes, you are right. Definitely, there are children who are there in children home and wishing to experiment. While in the CWC had the experience, we some cases were reported from a children home, and where a large number of the girls, the older girls, were those who had been in a romantic relationship and then chosen to not go with the parents and stay in a childcare institution. Now, since they were sexually active, there was a trend of these girls and some other girls coming into a relationship. Secondly, there was one girl who was definitely, whose sexual orientation was towards LGBTI. And so what we looked at in that scenario was to, the solution is not to get them out or separate them. It's about, having education, reproductive health, sexual health, reproduction, education, which needs to be given to these children. There have been also cases where, children who were trafficked were actually sometimes abused by, the trafficker who could be from the same sex. This was also a situation where, again, it's all about counseling, and really counseling not to say that it's wrong. It's counseling more on the reproductive health and the sexual health, and having the right decision, helping them understand the situation.
Vidya, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, we haven't come across any cases reported to the police per se, so they've not really come into the purview of the system. But schools have asked us what to do, and schools just want everything to be vanilla. They don't want to even grapple with these issues. So I think it's a large part of also working for the kids in school, working with the school system to understand that this and that's, it's like working with the police. Oh boy, that's a different story altogether, yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. That is all that we do have time for. And thank you so much to all the wonderful panelists. And I think we can really end on this point where one emphatic focus is now being placed on how all of the systems, the entire systems, as Honorable Justice said in his wonderful judgment, X versus State NCT, that survivor-centric justice is really what we all need to start looking at. The entire system needs a change in its lens, needs a change in its focus on to really repairing the harm that survivors have experienced, instead of just on the punitive lens of the law. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for the questions and listening to us. Thank you once again to the panelists. We will wrap up over here.
I'd like to thank the panel for taking out the time today to come here and have such a stimulating conversation. And I don't think anyone could have ended at a better note than Nimisha just did. As all the discussions happened today are being reeled in, we now finally move into our closing session. Joining us for this session, I'd like to invite our esteemed guests on stage. Ms. Bharti Ali, co-founder, director, Haq Center for Child Rights. And our chief guest for the session, Honorable Justice Jasmeet Singh, Judge, High Court of Delhi. I'd also like to invite our chairperson, Shri Anurag Kundu, Nidhi Dwivedi, ma'am, member DCPCR, and our member secretary, Mr. Kulnand Joshi, to join us on stage for the session. I request our chairperson, Shri Anurag Kundu sir, to felicitate Honorable Justice Jasmeet Singh with a small token from our side. I request Ms. Simran, Junior Consultant, DCPCR, to come on stage and felicitate Ms. Bharti Ali. I think we've had extremely important discussions that have happened till now, and very important points that have been raised, which we all, I'm hoping, have noted down, which when we go back to do our work tomorrow. Reeling in all the conversations that have happened till now, I request Shri Anurag Kundu, Chairperson DCPCR, to summarize the day's conversation and also how we'd like to take these conversations forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Honorable Justice Jasmeet, our keynote speaker of the closing ceremony, Ms. Bharti Ali, and everyone. I think, sir, we started with Professor Vajpayee's address, and he gave an interesting lens. He said we need to examine statutes from a victimological perspective, while our approach so far has been penal or punitive in approach. While that has its own relevance, we surely cannot be limited to that approach. And he built his argument around victim assistance authorities, compensation process to be made easier, and the very idea of, because now the POCSO has undergone a decade-long journey, about the very idea of impact assessment of the statute. I think the time is right. Those are pretty much the key points Professor Vajpayee in the morning began with and have stuck to us so far. Thereafter, Honorable Justice Tara began by helping us reflect on the very terminology and vocabulary that we use. For example, we repeatedly refer children who have been subject to sexual violence as victim. And she urged us to reflect if we can find a better term which has less negative connotation. Survivor is one idea. In the discussion, the person harmed is another idea. And that's important not for semantics, but language does reflect our ways of thinking and potential ways of moving forward. So language then becomes critical. The Justice Tara also referred to several studies pointing out the educational breakdowns, the medical breakdowns, the legal breakdowns, the financial breakdowns in our quest to support children who have been harmed because of sexual violence. She referred to several other policies, such as policies related to street children. And lastly, she concluded by drawing our attention to some of the very progressive provisions in the POCSO Rules 2020, which have now repealed POCSO Rules 2012. And some of the progressive provisions, for instance, one is that every state must formulate a zero-tolerance-oriented state child protection policy for all institutions, be it schools or any institutions that deal with children. So happy to report that we have spent some time over the last year and have drafted the state child protection policy to advise Delhi government, which we have put out in public domain, and we welcome everyone's comments, critiques, suggestions, and vehement disagreements as well. She also brought to attention the additional provision of special relief, which is 10,000 rupees to meet contingencies of the children who have been harmed because of sexual violence on an immediate and urgent basis. And she concluded by once again bringing to our attention that the children who have been harmed because of sexual assault need to undergo testing of sexually transmitted disease, which currently is not happening. In particular, HIV. And the law provides a framework for that. Now, while the law provides a framework, the protocols need to be in place and strictly then adhered to. I've always believed, and it's actually not my belief, I've imported someone else's belief. There's a beautiful saying, and it says, justice is what love looks like in public. And when we love somebody, what do? We hold their hand when it's trembling. And justice is precisely that. And it says a support person would hold your hand when it begins to tremble. Justice is what love looks like in public. We go out of our way to help those who we love. And justice, in its statutory forms, provide discretionary powers to, for example, the Child Welfare Committee. It casts very important obligations on institutions like DALSA to go out of the way, to streamline the process, to make process easier and less problematic. And that is what justice looks like in public unfolds. When we love somebody, we stand by. And sometimes we stand by even when we can do nothing. For example, if hypothetically I were to be admitted with a very serious, let's say, injury in a hospital, many of my loved ones will visit me. They're not medically qualified. They can do zilch for my recovery, for my physical recovery. But their standing by is an assurance. We stand by in many formats, and the law enables, encourages, and provides a framework for standing by. And that's precisely what justice in love, justice in public looks like, and it is nothing but love. I hope we walk away with being more loving today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And like I reiterated earlier also, I do hope we all move a little from the theoretical understanding of justice that we were all taught in our classrooms and have a more humane approach to it. If you look at the field of child rights and protection, especially in Delhi, Haq Center for Child Rights and Bharti Ali ma'am are synonymous to the good fight being done and how far we have come today. Ma'am is a development professional and social activist working on issues concerning the rights of women and children for over 29 years. She's also the president of Child Rights and Sustainability Trust, an NGO based in Bangalore focusing on sustainable development and children's ecological rights. She is serving as a member of the State Inspection Committee for CCIs in Delhi and the statutory body of DSLSA. I invite you, ma'am, to address the audience while highlighting, if possible, that where do you think we're stuck today and all the challenges that we face when we talk about rehabilitation and reintegration.
Honorable Justice Jasmeet Singh, Honorable Chairperson, Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights, Honorable Joint Secretary of the Commission and Member Nidhi ji, all dignitaries of the dais. There's a lot said by my little friend here, young friend here, about what I should be focusing on. And taking on that, I'd like to start with the story which I recall many years ago. This was a case where an undersecretary in the Home Ministry was sexually abusing his own daughter. It's a famous case, Sudesh Jhaku versus NCT of Delhi. And not just he, but he also involved some of his colleagues in the sexual abuse. It was also a case where there was no peno-vaginal penetration. So objects were used, pencils and other toys. And the law at that time was pretty weak compared to what we have now in terms of POCSO Act. You must be wondering, why am I talking about this case when the program is on rehabilitation? But the reason why I'm bringing this up is that at that time there was acquittal in the case because it was very difficult to bring it technically under the definition of Section 376 of IPC and also under 377 of IPC and for various other technical difficulties. But this child who had been subjected to this abuse and the mother who were fighting this battle almost were left alone. And today, when I want to look at it, I want to see whether it's the same situation in these kind of cases today. In a lot of cases, we've been able to make some achievements. I won't say it's exactly the same. About 12 to 15% of cases are cases of incest abuse. That's what our analysis is showing us as far as Delhi is concerned. And if you look at those cases, of course, many of them turn hostile. But the fact is that a lot of them are also today pursuing the legal battle, and they don't find themselves alone anymore. So I think each one of us sitting here today have to feel good about that, and then reflect on what else needs to change. So the what else needs to change then takes me to the next question is of who are these who are turning hostile, and why are they turning hostile? Why is the kind of support we are offering not really having any meaning for them? They're not buying in to that support. What is it that we need to do? And that's when we can't be talking about rehabilitation unless we've invested enough in changing attitudes, in changing mindsets, unless we've invested enough in behavior change communication. So I think it's high time we focus on that as well. The other point that I want to make is that, I'm looking, since morning we've talked about a lot of things, and I thank Vidya for pointing out that we are forgetting the word reintegration somewhere. So, my understanding of rehabilitation comes from the field, from the medical and health field, where, a person, and largely from the disability sector, where you rehabilitate someone with the necessary aids, tools, appliances, to get back to lead, to live on. So if I go with that understanding of rehabilitation, I may be able to provide education support. I may be able to provide, counseling. I may be able to provide a vocational training, make some of those interventions. But I still will not have actually reintegrated the child unless I have changed the child's environment and the attitude towards the child who's victim, survivor, whatever we may call. And how does that happen? Because even today, our children, after the abuse, feel guilt, feel shame. They carry that burden throughout the legal proceedings in a court, if the legal proceedings are continuing. That guilt and burden carries on even after the trial has been completed. How do we change that? So that, again, goes back to my point on working towards behavior change communication. Another point that I'd like to talk about is that there are some changes which are required in the system. I mean, my 2-point, or rather 1-point response to that would be that we've been doing a lot of training, sensitization for child welfare committees, police, for judiciary, for a lot of people. We haven't touched the finance secretaries. That's where a lot of the problem lies. So I think we need to really start working with the finance secretaries and the accounts departments. Special relief is there in the law. Some guidelines were framed by the Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights. They cannot be rolled out because the finance secretaries have to say yes, and they have to be allowing money to be given to the child. Witness protection, victim compensation, running around for bank accounts, getting children disability certificate where they need a disability certificate. All of these are issues that support persons deal with on a daily basis when they're involved in cases. But the support persons in Delhi don't get a penny, and in many states. Many states have not really rolled out, any sort of monetary remuneration or honorarium to support persons for the services they are providing. And it's not just the support persons, it's special educators, it's translators, interpreters. It all gets stuck with the finance secretary. So let's focus on the finance secretary in our next training program, request to the Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights. But also, let's not just have these things on paper. They have to be really implemented well. Let me just share. I know CSJ has shared this wonderful piece here, which tells you the amount of work that goes in when you're talking about rehabilitation and reintegration of children. I'll probably add a few more. I mean, I'm seeing here a case of a child who was adopted by her own paternal uncle and aunt, Chacha and Chachi. And then the uncle started sexually abusing her. And her own biological parents did not support this child. So the child had to be kept in a child care institution. But after some time, we follow this principle, and it's a very typical case where this whole, conflict arose as to what should gain primary importance. Whether the Juvenile Justice Act says institutionalization should be a measure of last resort. Absolutely, I think many of us here would say it has to be a measure of last resort. There is another principle in the JJ Act which talks about principle of family environment, there's a principle of restoration and repatriation, and there is a principle of best interest. And you're often in conflict as to how do you weigh all of this. So in this child's case, who was in a CCI, the child was, after some time, restored to her family, to her biological parents. And that's when the conflict between these different principles started. The Child Welfare Committee, to its own wisdom, had taken a decision like this. But these are not easy issues, and we still have a lot of work to do around resolving how do we determine the best interest of the child. And I will there request again DCPCR, if we can start documenting some of these practices to at least understand how and what really do we mean by best interest of the child. And how do you harmonize? It's not about actually conflict. It's about how do you harmonize the various principles that are ingrained in what is known as the jurisprudence around child justice. Some other systemic changes required. Witness protection. Delhi is the first one to have rolled out a witness protection scheme. And then we got a judgment from the Supreme Court whereupon the Delhi scheme was revised. The witness protection scheme should be strengthened to look at and address pre-trial as well as post-trial witness protection. That's where we are lacking at the moment. The court processes are streamlined through the POCSO Act, through the rules, and now this particular scheme. But when I say that it needs to be streamlined and rolled out, the first thing, maybe also we could look at a possibility of amending and making some changes. The first thing is that a threat analysis is to be done by the police. And that's where people lose all hope. So if you're really wanting to provide witness protection and give confidence to witnesses to be able to talk openly about what they're facing, then it cannot be a police agency. We probably need to think on some of these changes. And then, as I said, it has to be also post-trial. Often enough, we feel trial complete hua, everything's done now. But the follow-up is what is needed. That's the most important part of any rehabilitation intervention or program. And we'll see, there was another case where, this child was given victim compensation. And the child was with her brother. She had to shift her home. She was first, restored to her father after, again, without really any serious investigation, because this father, the parents had separated, and there was, No reason why the father should have asked for the child after so many years, but he asked and the child was restored to the father. The father started abusing her, the child moved to an elder brother. The elder brother could not really look after her, moved to another elder brother. Then COVID happened. And COVID happened, he lost his job. He lost his job, so he consumed the entire victim compensation money that was given to this child. And so this child's situation really didn't change in that sense. So there's a lot of emphasis that is required on follow-up if we truly want to talk about rehabilitation and reintegration. And that system somehow has not been built in or built up as yet. So case over, file closed. CWC, case over, file closed. Courts, case over, file closed, and then nothing really. Therefore, even greater need to invest in support person services. So I think we also need to go back to the model guidelines that were developed by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. We've all lost sight of those guidelines. They are there. They're still there on the website, fortunately. Many things have changed on the ministry's website, but some of the things are still there. So let's start looking at those guidelines. You talked about medical examination and a new set of performer. You know, I was looking at the older one, which is issued by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and it says that the treatment, medical examination and treatment are meant to be free of cost. Yeah? To the extent that if the cost of certain tests and medicines cannot be met in that particular hospital and they have to be done elsewhere, or for whatever reason, there is a burden on the family to meet costs of certain medicines and tests, then the social workers in those hospitals are supposed to assist and ensure that they receive those, they are able to carry out tests and they receive the medicines free of cost. This has not worked out anywhere. Nobody's attention ever went to this. So we need to start, and these are aspects that are mentioned in the model guidelines. We need to revisit what is already existing and not reinvent new things, and then start working towards their implementation. I'll end on that note, and I have to thank the Commission for organizing something so valuable, and Council to Secure Justice. The partners we started with has been Council to Secure Justice. We shall continue to work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for highlighting how, again, language is extremely important and the various steps that we need to go moving on. I think we have our work sorted out for us at the Commission in the coming weeks now. Moving on, Justice Jasmeet Singh has been the Judge of High Court of Delhi since February 2021. He graduated from Hindu College of Delhi University in BCom Honours and obtained his degree in law from Delhi University. In 2013, he was appointed as Standing Counsel for the Delhi Sikh Gurdwara Management Committee in the Delhi High Court. In 2014, Sir was appointed as the Central Government Standing Counsel in the Delhi High Court. Sir's contributions via his judgments on compensation of those who have experienced sexual abuse are extremely important in the discourse that is being done today also. I invite you, sir, to share your thoughts on the conversation being held today.
Mr. Kundu, Ms. Ali, distinguished guests, good afternoon. The topic today, I would say a lot has been done in rehabilitation, towards rehabilitation, but still a lot needs to be done. It is work in progress, it is headed in the right direction, but still I would personally feel a lot still requires to be done. So POCSO POCSO 2012 is an act which is which not only is punitive but also assures affirmative action. On one end you have imprisonment which can extend to life, but on the other hand it also concentrates on granting compensation to the victim. So, but generally what happens is that once the matter, the case comes to an end, that is the time when compensation is granted to the survivor. So that kind of loses or derails, because rehabilitation or compensation is required not at the end of the process, but sometime in between, sometimes at the beginning of the rehabilitation process. In fact, one of the cases which came to court was that there was a survivor of sexual assault, and because of lack of finances, the child could not be moved from the area where the child was residing. The parents could not move to another area, as a result of which the child again was sexually abused because of lack of finances to move to another place. So these are issues which really require attention, and the Delhi High Court, in one of this judgment of X versus State, has kind of said that interim compensation needs to be paid at the time when the charge sheet is filed. That is a step forward, but how it needs to be taken forward is by the executing agencies. So another aspect which needs attention is that most of these survivors are victims of, the person who's the accused is either a family member or is a person who exercises control over that child. This is an aspect which again needs attention, because the accused is more often than not in a position to groom the child. So that often results in acquittal. The witnesses become hostile. The trial takes a huge period of time. So this is again one issue which, when we talk about rehabilitation, all these issues need to be addressed. See, what happens in a trial is that the counsel for the accused has a duty to perform. He has to be honest to his client, who's the accused. So his effort is to prove that the survivor is either lying, is exaggerating the incident did not happen. So that results in kind of re-traumatization, reliving the whole incident by the survivor. This again is something which needs to be addressed because the criminal justice system requires the survivor to be cross-examined. The child has to be cross-examined. The counsel, the lawyer for the accused, has to try and prove that. These are issues which are plaguing the system, but needs to be addressed. I'm sure as we move forward, things would be done in this direction. Another aspect which I need to highlight is about rehabilitation is that the survivor needs to be integrated back into the society. What I feel we have kind of in all these cases tried and interacted with the survivor also in chambers. So what they actually are looking for is a voice. They need to be, they want to be brought back into the society. They need to be, how should I put it? They need to be, it needs to be told that yes, a wrong has been done. It needs to be told that yes, you have been wronged. It has to be recognized. So this is again something where the society, the surroundings, the family members need to be more sensitized, need to be more aware of the issue that actually the child feels that the child has been wronged, and that needs to be recognized. I would one of the most important issues which I feel needs to be seen, needs to be looked is adolescent love. Now, what happens is today we have criminalized sexual acts with children below 18. Now, adolescents are children who are in a position or who want to experiment, who want to be, who would be sexually active. Now, is a person who is between 16 to 18, one of the child is 18, one of the child is 19, can they be equated with the same brush, or can they be equated in the same scenario where a victim is of 18 and the offender is about 30, 35? So this is, adolescence is something which needs to be looked at. Are we over-criminalizing the adolescent love? This is an issue which, according to me, needs a look, because there are cases where the one child is 17, the other child is 20, they've fallen in love, the law says consent of a minor is no consent, but I personally feel that this is an issue which needs to be looked into and needs to be addressed, needs to be flagged, and in the end, I would like to say that DCPCR is an essential key in creating awareness, in taking cognizance of the complaints which have been received, taking suo motu cognizance, ensuring that the child gets counseling, because that, according to me, is one of the most important features of rehabilitation process. And they are, in fact, in touch with children directly or indirectly through staff, through teachers, through child lines, NGOs. So they are in fact, the first line of rehabilitation process. They have done a tremendous job. Their efforts are laudable, and they should continue doing the good work they are doing. So in the end, I would just like to say that affirmative action is most important. We must recognize the importance of victimology. End of the day, it is the victim or the survivor who needs to be rehabilitated, needs to be integrated back into the society, and that is where we should work towards. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for your words, and it definitely is a work in progress that we're all doing here. And I often go back to my favorite quote regarding the criminal justice system, where it was once called the criminal legal system, because the justice at times is often missing or disproportionate. And I do hope we can call it criminal justice system one day, truly. The seminar has brought out various factors of good practices, challenges, and the way forward for all those working in this sector right now. I hope we can all go home today with the words not being left in these four walls itself. As I leave you with that, I would like to invite Ms. Nidhi Dwivedi, member DCPCR, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon to all. I am feeling very happy and privileged to present here and express my heartfelt gratitude on behalf of Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights on the occasion of today's seminar, Rehabilitation of POCSO Victims. As we all know, that saying thank you is a respectful way to humbly show appreciation towards our guests and, most importantly, their priceless thoughts, but these words would not be enough for our prestigious chief guest. Still, I take the privilege to thank Honorable Justice Ms. Tara Madam for her eminent presence and share her inputs for rehabilitation of POCSO victims. She talked about to find the shortcomings, to work upon it by joining the hand of all stakeholders, and to focus on educational and vocational training to rehabilitate POCSO victims. I also thank Honorable Mr. Justice Jasmeet sir for sharing way forward keys like interim compensation at the time of charge sheet need filed, and survivors need integration in the society. Family members and society should be sensitized to understand the child to rehabilitate the child. Sir, your valuable suggestions and recommendations will go a long way in shaping our future initiatives and policies towards protecting and promoting the rights of children. We extend our thanks to Professor G.S. Bajpayee. Sir, I thank you from bottom of my heart for your presence and contribution to the cause of program and to see the things in a legal framework to solve the issue of POCSO victims. I extend my warm thanks to Ms. Bharti Ali to her graceful presence in the seminar and make this seminar a very resounding success for her and for her enlightening deliberation to the experienced and professional delegates present here and who got the message through virtual link. Bharti ji talked about follow-ups, changing mindsets and attitudes, which is the demand of the time. Honorarium for the support persons, documentation, and various things for the rehabilitation of the POCSO survivors. I would also like to express our gratitude to panelist Mr. Pranat Kumar Joshi ji, Secretary DALSA. He talked about systematic data for POCSO survivors by police and support persons should be must appointed by CWC. Charu Makkar from CWC, she is former CWC and JJB member and expert trainer in POCSO and JJ Act and Adoption and Regulation Act. I would also like to thank Dr. Shipra Singh, Assistant Director EVAS, Madam Vidya Reddy ji from Tolir NGO. Madam has done lots of research and study work on the rehabilitation of POCSO victims. I would also like to thank Ms. Nimisha from Council and Secure Justice. I would like to thank from bottom of my heart our chairperson, Mr. Anurag Kundu ji, whose management and promptness made the whole event an astonishing marvel. Sir always guided us as a mentor to understand the nitty-gritties and learn new things from new perspective at every level. Thank you, sir, once again. I would also like to thank our member secretary, Mr. Kolanand Joshi ji, for his kind support to sort out all administrative issues to organize this program in a well manner. I would like to thank Ms. Shalini Chaudhary from Human Development Society and Ms. Arusi from Council to Secure Justice for their valuable presentations. I would like to thank all CWC members, chairpersons, JJB members and principal magistrates, all POs and DCPOs from all districts, DWCD, all advocates, Ms. Alka ji, Director Prosecution, all CCI's representatives, all police officials, all councillors, NGOs and civil society organizations, childline representatives and representatives from DALSA, all support persons. I would like to thank our collaboration partner, Council for Secure Justice, Director Ms. Nimisha ji. Her NGO Council for Secure Justice is also doing a great work to provide the counseling and support to rehabilitate them. I would like to thank DCPCR team, especially Ms. Simran, who took the responsibility of this seminar. I appreciate her hard work and dedication towards given task. I thank Mr. Kem, Senior Consultant Mohammad Salam Khan ji, Mr. Narula ji, Member Ms. Ranjana ji, Nitai ji, Rupika, Arushi, Parveen, Dheeraj, Gitanjali, all support staff, Pandey ji, Ashwini, Arif, and civil defense volunteers. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all who were directly or indirectly part of this seminar, especially our live telecasting team, journalists, and all those who are present here. I also thank the ones whose names I have forgotten to take. I thank you all. Lastly, I would like to share one thing that should remain between you and me, that is delicious food. Please join us.
Thank you, ma'am. We can all head for lunch now.